the Book of Enoch. In the hills of Ethiopia, within the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, a text survives that most of Christianity rejected. The Book of Enoch, attributed to the great-grandfather of Noah, was removed from biblical canon by early church councils. Only the Ethiopian Church preserved it as scripture. The text dates to approximately the 3rd century before the Common Era, though it claims to record events from the time before the Great Flood. The book describes Enoch's journeys through the heavens, guided by angels who reveal cosmic secrets. He witnesses the movements of celestial bodies, the structure of the universe, and the dwelling places of angels. The astronomical details are precise, describing solar and lunar cycles, the paths of stars, and the chambers of the winds. This knowledge, the text claims, was forbidden to humanity. The most controversial sections describe the Watchers, a group of 200 angels who descended to Mount Hermon. These beings lusted after human women and took them as wives. The offspring of these unions were the Nephilim, giants who consumed all the resources of humanity and eventually turned to cannibalism. The Watchers taught forbidden knowledge to humans. Azazel taught metalworking, the creation of weapons and cosmetics. Shemihaza taught enchantments and root cutting. Other Watchers revealed astrology, the signs of the earth, the signs of the sun and moon, and the motions of celestial bodies. This sharing of heavenly knowledge corrupted humanity. The text suggests that civilization itself, particularly technologies of war and vanity, resulted from angelic rebellion rather than human ingenuity. God sent the archangels to bind the Watchers in valleys of the earth until the day of judgment. The flood was sent to cleanse the earth of the Nephilim and their violence. Why was this text removed from most biblical canons? Church authorities in the 4th century deemed it too problematic. The idea that angels could rebel, breed with humans, and teach forbidden knowledge complicated official theology. The text also contained detailed angelology and demonology that church leaders found excessive or heretical. Jude's epistle in the New Testament quotes Enoch directly, showing early Christians knew and respected the text. But as Christianity organized and standardized, Enoch was excluded. Jewish tradition also largely rejected Enoch, though fragments were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, proving it circulated in Second Temple Judaism. Aramaic and Greek versions existed, but most were lost. Only the Ethiopian Gigas translation survived complete, preserved by a church, isolated from mainstream Christianity's theological evolution. Modern scholars debate whether the Book of Enoch preserves ancient flood mythologies predating Genesis, or whether it elaborates on brief Genesis passages about the sons of God and daughters of men. The astronomical sections demonstrate sophisticated observation of celestial mechanics. The ethical teachings emphasize righteousness and condemn oppression. The apocalyptic visions describe final judgment with vivid imagery. Some researchers suggest the Watchers represent cultural memory of knowledge transfer between ancient civilizations. Metallurgy, astronomy, and writing did spread through trade and conquest. The text transforms historical diffusion into mythological transgression, making technology itself a forbidden fruit. Others see the text as purely theological, explaining evil's origins through angelic rebellion rather than human sinfulness alone. The book's influence persists despite its exclusion from canon. Medieval grimoires referenced Enochian angels. Renaissance occultists studied it for magical knowledge. Modern angel mythology draws heavily from Enoch's detailed descriptions of heavenly hierarchies. The text shaped ideas about fallen angels, Nephilim, and the corruption of antediluvian civilization. The Ethiopian Church maintains that Enoch is divinely inspired scripture. They reject its exclusion as a mistake by churches who lack the complete text or understanding. For them, Enoch is essential to understanding the flood, the nature of evil, and humanity's relationship with the divine. The text remains in their liturgy, read during services, taught to priests. The Book of Enoch sits at the boundary between accepted scripture and forbidden knowledge. It contains teachings deemed too dangerous or confusing for mainstream Christianity, yet too sacred for complete suppression. It survives in the margins, preserved by those who refuse to let it disappear entirely. The Emerald Tablets of Thoth. In the modern era, a text appeared claiming to be the wisdom of Thoth, the ancient Egyptian god of knowledge, translated from emerald tablets hidden beneath the Great Pyramid. The Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Atlantean, were published in 1938 by Maurice Doreal, founder of the Brotherhood of the White Temple. He claimed to have accessed and translated original tablets written in Atlantean script. The text describes Thoth as an Atlantean priest-king who brought advanced knowledge to Egypt after Atlantis sank beneath the waves. He supposedly lived for thousands of years through alchemical mastery of his physical form. The tablets contain teachings on transmutation, consciousness, spiritual evolution, and the structure of reality across multiple dimensions. The language is mystical and cryptic. Thoth describes reality as thought manifesting into matter. Consciousness is primary, the physical world is its projection. The tablets teach methods for raising consciousness through meditation, visualization, and control of thought. They describe 7 dimensions of existence, with physical reality being the lowest. Higher dimensions contain beings of pure consciousness and light. Alchemy features prominently. Not the medieval pursuit of turning lead to gold, but spiritual transformation. The tablets describe transmuting base consciousness into enlightened awareness. The process involves balancing opposing forces within oneself, symbolized by darkness and light, masculine and feminine, expansion and contraction. Achieving this balance allows one to transcend physical limitations. The tablets mention a great cycle of time during which civilizations rise and fall. Atlantis represented a peak of spiritual and technological development, but fell through misuse of power. Some Atlanteans, including Thoth, escaped before the final cataclysm, preserving knowledge in Egypt and other locations. The Great Pyramid was built as a repository of wisdom and an initiation chamber for those seeking higher consciousness. The text claims to be forbidden because it reveals secrets meant only for initiates. Thoth supposedly entrusted the tablets to select priests across generations, each guarding them until finding a worthy successor. The knowledge contained was considered dangerous if misapplied, capable of granting power over natural forces that could be used destructively. There is no archaeological evidence that these emerald tablets exist. No ancient Egyptian texts reference them. Thoth was indeed the Egyptian god of wisdom, writing, and magic, often depicted with an ibis head. The Greeks later identified him with Hermes, creating the syncretic figure Hermes Trismegistus. But the specific emerald tablets described by Doreal have no historical provenance before his publication. Scholars recognize the text as a modern creation, blending Hermeticism, Theosophy, and New Age philosophy with Egyptian imagery. The language and concepts reflect 20th century esoteric movements, not ancient Egyptian thought. References to Atlantis draw from Plato's dialogues and Madame Blavatsky's theosophical teachings rather than Egyptian sources. Despite their modern origin, the Emerald Tablets gained a following. They appealed to those seeking ancient wisdom and secret knowledge. The mystique of hidden tablets in Egyptian vaults resonated with popular fascination with Egypt's mysteries. Readers found value in the spiritual teachings regardless of historical authenticity. Confusion arose because earlier alchemical texts also reference an emerald tablet, singular, attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. This brief medieval text contained the famous phrase, "as above, so below," and outlined principles of Hermetic philosophy. It genuinely dates to the medieval period and influenced Islamic and European alchemy. Doreal's emerald tablets are entirely separate, though they borrowed credibility from the earlier tradition. The modern emerald tablets represent a type of forbidden text different from ancient manuscripts. They are forbidden not by historical suppression, but by their fictional nature presented as fact. They offer esoteric teachings to those willing to believe in their ancient origin. For believers, the tablets contain profound wisdom. For historians, they demonstrate how new mythologies are, created by blending fragments of genuine ancient cultures with contemporary spiritual movements. The text continues to circulate in New Age communities. Some readers approach it as allegory or meditation, finding value in the concepts regardless of literal truth. Others accept it as authentic ancient wisdom. The emerald tablets exist in the space between fiction and scripture, illustrating humanity's enduring need for secret knowledge and connection to vanished civilizations. The Hermetica. In the early centuries of the Common Era, in the cosmopolitan city of Alexandria, a collection of texts emerged attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great Hermes. These writings, known as the Hermetica or Corpus Hermeticum, blended Greek philosophy, Egyptian religion, astrology, alchemy, and mysticism into a synthesis that would influence Western esotericism for millennia. The texts take the form of dialogues between Hermes and his students, most notably his son Tat and his disciple Asclepius. Hermes transmits divine knowledge revealed to him through spiritual enlightenment. The central themes involve the nature of God, the creation of the cosmos, the nature of the human soul, and the path to salvation through knowledge. The Corpus Hermeticum begins with the Poimandres, a creation myth where Hermes receives a vision from the divine mind. The vision describes how the one God created the cosmos through emanation. First came divine light and mind, then the Word which organized primordial matter into the ordered universe. The 7 planets and their ruling spirits govern the sublunary realm. Humanity is unique, created in God's image, containing both divine spirit and material body. The texts emphasize gnosis, direct experiential knowledge of the divine. Salvation comes not through faith or works, but through understanding one's true nature as a spark of divine consciousness trapped in matter. Through philosophical contemplation, spiritual practice, and moral purification, the soul can remember its divine origin and ascend through the planetary spheres after death, shedding material attachments until reuniting with God. The Hermetica teach that the visible world is a reflection of invisible spiritual realities. As above, so below, the principle of correspondence means that patterns repeat across cosmic scales. Studying nature reveals divine principles. The macrocosm and microcosm mirror each other. Understanding celestial movements grants insight into earthly events. Mastering inner spiritual forces grants power over external material forces. Alchemy, both spiritual and material, finds its philosophical foundation in these texts. The transformation of base metals into gold symbolizes the soul's refinement from material ignorance to spiritual enlightenment. Later, alchemists studied Hermetic philosophy as the theoretical basis for their work, seeking to replicate in the laboratory what should first be achieved within consciousness. The texts were considered dangerous by early Christian authorities. They represented pagan philosophy competing with Christian theology. Worse, they offered an alternate path to salvation through knowledge rather than faith in Christ. The Hermetic emphasis on humanity's divine nature contradicted doctrines of original sin and total depravity. The promise of godlike powers through spiritual practice smacked of the serpent's temptation in Eden, yet Hermeticism survived. Byzantine scholars preserved Greek manuscripts. Arabic translations circulated in the Islamic world, where Hermetic philosophy influenced Islamic mysticism and alchemy. In 1493, Marsilio Ficino translated the Corpus Hermeticum into Latin at the request of Cosimo de' Medici. This translation sparked a Renaissance revival of Hermetic thought. For a time, scholars believed the Hermetica genuinely dated to ancient Egypt, written by a sage contemporary with Moses or even earlier. This supposed antiquity gave the text enormous authority. Thinkers like Giordano Bruno developed entire philosophical systems based on Hermetic principles. The text influenced the development of modern science, particularly through their emphasis on observing nature and seeking mathematical principles underlying physical phenomena. Isaac Casaubon demonstrated in 1614 that the Corpus Hermeticum was written in the early Common Era, not ancient Egypt. The Greek language and philosophical concepts clearly dated to the Hellenistic period. This revelation diminished the text's authority among mainstream scholars, but esoteric traditions continued valuing them. The Hermetica articulate a perennial philosophy found across cultures. The divine is both transcendent and immanent. The universe is alive and conscious. Humanity contains a divine spark. Knowledge liberates, and reality operates through interconnected correspondences. These ideas appear in Neoplatonism, Gnosticism, Kabbalah, Sufism, and various mystical traditions. The Hermetic text gave Western civilization one expression of these universal themes. Modern occultism draws heavily from Hermeticism. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn in the late 19th century structured its teachings around Hermetic principles. Aleister Crowley's Thelema incorporated Hermetic philosophy. Contemporary paganism, chaos magic, and ceremonial magic all reference Hermetic concepts. The texts remain foundational to Western esotericism despite their historical demystification. The Hermetica were forbidden not through violent suppression, but through marginalization. Orthodox Christianity declared them heretical. Enlightenment rationalism dismissed them as superstitious, yet they persisted in the underground currents of Western thought, influencing those who sought wisdom outside approved channels. They represent knowledge that institutional authorities found threatening, teachings that offered spiritual power independent of church or state sanction. The Book of Giants. Among the Dead Sea Scrolls discovered in Qumran caves, fragments of an ancient text tell the story of the Nephilim, the giant offspring of the Watchers and human women. The Book of Giants expands on the brief Genesis account and parallels the Book of Enoch, describing the fate of these antediluvian beings who terrorized the earth before the flood. The text survives only in fragments found in both Hebrew and Aramaic among the Dead Sea Scrolls, and in later Manichaean versions written in several Middle Eastern languages. Scholars piece together the narrative from these incomplete sources. The book likely dates to the 2nd or 1st century before the Common Era, circulating among Jewish communities but never achieving canonical status. The giants are named Ohia and Hahia, sons of the fallen angel Shemihaza. Mahaway, another giant who serves as messenger, and others whose names appear in fragmentary passages. These beings possess superhuman size and strength. They consume the resources of humanity, devouring crops, livestock, and eventually people themselves. Their violence spreads across the earth. They wage war against each other, turning their supernatural strength toward mutual destruction. The giants experience troubling dreams. These visions disturb them greatly, suggesting awareness of their coming doom. One giant dreams of a tablet being plunged into water, with only 3 names preserved. Another dreams of a garden being uprooted, with only 3 trees remaining. The giants recognize these as omens, but cannot interpret them fully. Mahaway travels to consult Enoch, who now dwells in paradise after being taken up by God. The journey is supernatural, crossing vast distances instantly. Mahaway finds Enoch and relates the giant's dreams. Enoch interprets the visions. The flood is coming, the giants will be destroyed. Only Noah and his sons, represented by the 3 names or 3 trees, will survive. Enoch records the wickedness of the Watchers and their offspring in heavenly books. These serve as evidence in the divine judgment against them. The text emphasizes that the giant's destruction is decreed by God as punishment for the Watcher's transgression in revealing forbidden knowledge and breeding with humans. The giants themselves, though born rather than choosing to fall, are condemned because of their violence and the impossibility of their existence within God's created order. The theological problem the text addresses is the origin of evil and violence in the world. Rather than attributing it solely to human sinfulness, the Book of Giants locates it in a cosmic rebellion. The Watcher's descent introduced supernatural corruption into the natural world. The giants represent the perversion of creation through this unnatural mixing of angelic and human natures. The text also explores the giants' awareness of their fate. They are not merely monsters, but beings with consciousness, capable of fear and seeking understanding. Their dreams trouble them because they sense the judgment approaching. This adds tragic dimensions to their destruction, yet their violence against humanity leaves no possibility of redemption. The flood must cleanse the earth of them. Why was this text excluded from biblical canon? Like the Book of Enoch, it elaborates too extensively on the brief Genesis passage about the Nephilim. It creates detailed mythology around figures barely mentioned in Scripture. The Church Fathers worried that such elaborations distracted from essential theological points or introduced errors through imaginative expansion. The text's survival in Manichaeism is significant. Mani, the 3rd century founder of this dualistic religion, incorporated various religious texts into his system. Manichaeism spread from Persia to China, and Manichaean communities preserved texts that mainstream Judaism and Christianity discarded. The Book of Giants fit Manichaean theology, which emphasized cosmic conflict between light and darkness, spirit and matter. When scholars discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 1940s and 50s, finding fragments of the Book of Giants among them confirmed the text's Jewish origins. It was not merely a Manichaean invention, but an earlier Jewish apocalyptic work that Mani adapted. The Qumran community, likely Essenes, preserved many texts that mainstream Judaism rejected, including the Book of Giants. The text provides context for understanding Second Temple Judaism's diverse theologies. Not all Jews agreed on which texts were scripture or how to interpret the Torah. The Book of Giants represents a tradition that saw evil as fundamentally cosmic in origin, requiring supernatural explanation. This contrasted with Rabbinic Judaism's emphasis on human moral choice and the evil inclination within each person. Modern readers find the Book of Giants fascinating for its mythological richness. The names of giants, their dreams, Enoch's role as interpreter, these details create a vivid antediluvian world. The text humanizes the Nephilim to some degree, showing them as conscious beings facing destruction, even as it condemns them for violence. The Book of Giants remains forbidden in the sense that major religious traditions reject it as scripture, yet its rediscovery and translation make it accessible to anyone interested. It exists in the borderlands of canon, too mythological for orthodoxy, but too compelling to ignore entirely. The Dead Sea Scrolls. In 1947, a Bedouin shepherd searching for a lost goat near the Dead Sea threw a stone into a cave and heard pottery breaking. He had discovered the first of the Dead Sea Scrolls, ancient manuscripts hidden in jars for nearly 2,000 years. Over the following decade, archaeologists and local Bedouins found thousands of scroll fragments in 11 caves near Qumran. The scrolls date primarily from the 3rd century before the Common Era to the 1st century of the Common Era. They include biblical texts, apocryphal works, sectarian documents, and previously unknown compositions. The biblical manuscripts are the oldest surviving copies of Hebrew Bible texts, predating previously known manuscripts by 1,000 years. Their discovery revolutionized biblical scholarship. Some scrolls remain restricted or controversial, not because authorities hide them, but because their contents challenge conventional understandings. The Temple Scroll describes ritual purity laws and temple architecture in detail, presenting regulations not found in the biblical Torah. It suggests the Qumran community believed the Jerusalem temple was corrupted and envisioned an idealized temple according to divine specifications. The War Scroll describes an apocalyptic final battle between the Sons of Light and the Sons of Darkness. The conflict involves not only human armies but angelic forces. The text provides liturgical prayers for different phases of battle and instructions for military organization. It reflects a community expecting imminent cosmic war, culminating in God's final judgment. The community rule outlines the organization and practices of the sect, likely Essenes, who lived at Qumran. It describes initiation rituals, communal meals, property sharing, and strict discipline. Members underwent probationary periods before full admission. The community saw itself as the true Israel, maintaining purity in a corrupt age while awaiting God's intervention. The Pesharim are biblical commentaries interpreting prophetic books as referring to contemporary events and figures. The Habakkuk Pesher, for example, interprets Habakkuk's prophecies as describing conflicts between the teacher of righteousness, the wicked priest, and various political powers of the commentator's time. This approach assumes biblical prophecy has immediate relevance, encoded references to current events. Some scrolls contain previously unknown psalms, prayers, and wisdom literature. The Thanksgiving hymns express intense piety and gratitude for salvation. They emphasize human unworthiness and God's grace in granting knowledge to the elect. The theology resembles predestination doctrines. God predetermined who would be saved before creation. The Copper Scroll is unique among the Dead Sea Scrolls, inscribed on copper sheets rather than written on parchment. It lists locations where vast treasures of gold and silver are supposedly buried. Whether this describes real treasure or is symbolic remains debated. The scroll's material and content differ from other Qumran texts, suggesting it may have different origins. Controversies arose over the scroll's publication. Initially, a small team of scholars controlled access to unpublished fragments, leading to accusations of suppression. Conspiracy theories claim the Vatican influenced scholars to hide texts contradicting Christian doctrine. In reality, the delays resulted from the painstaking work of piecing together thousands of tiny fragments and the small size of the original publication team. By the 1990s, all Dead Sea Scroll materials became publicly accessible. No smoking gun contradicting mainstream Christianity or Judaism emerged. The scrolls show diversity in Second Temple Jewish thought, but do not overturn fundamental understandings of biblical texts. They do provide context for understanding early Christianity's Jewish roots and the variety of Jewish practices before 70 CE, when the Romans destroyed the Second Temple. The scrolls reveal a community living in anticipation of the end times. They separated from mainstream society, considering it hopelessly corrupt. They maintained rigorous purity, studied scripture intensively, and awaited divine intervention. This apocalyptic worldview parallels early Christianity, though no clear connection between the Qumran community and Jesus' followers has been established. Some scrolls contain calendrical texts showing the community used a different calendar than the Jerusalem temple. They followed a 364-day solar calendar rather than the lunar calendar. This meant their festival dates differed from the official temple dates. They believed the temple priests had corrupted the sacred calendar, celebrating festivals on wrong days, rendering worship invalid. The scrolls confirm the fluidity of the biblical text before the 1st century. Variant readings exist across manuscripts. Some Hebrew Bible books appear in multiple editions. This shows the biblical text was still evolving, standardized only later by rabbinic authorities after the temple's destruction. The scrolls preserve a snapshot of this textual diversity. The Dead Sea Scrolls are forbidden in the sense that they were hidden away, preserved by a community that rejected mainstream religion. They contain teachings that community considered too sacred for outsiders. The eventual Roman military action that likely caused the scrolls' concealment in caves was an attempt to destroy the sect entirely. That the scrolls survived is accidental, discovered only after 2 millennia. Today the scrolls are treasures of human heritage, providing unparalleled insight into ancient Judaism and the world that produced both rabbinic Judaism and Christianity. They challenge no fundamental doctrines, but complicate simplified narratives, showing the rich diversity of belief and practice in the centuries surrounding the Common Era's beginning. The Gospel of Judas. In 1978, an ancient codex surfaced in Egypt, eventually passing through dealers and collectors before scholars authenticated it in the early 21st century. The Gospel of Judas, a Coptic text dating to the 3rd or 4th century CE, translating an earlier Greek original, presents a radically different portrayal of Christianity's most infamous traitor. The text belongs to Gnostic Christianity, a diverse movement emphasizing secret knowledge as the path to salvation. Gnostics believed the material world was created not by the true God, but by an ignorant or malevolent demiurge. The soul's entrapment in matter is the fundamental problem, escape possible only through gnosis, knowledge of one's true divine origin. In the Gospel of Judas, Jesus laughs at his disciples' misunderstanding. They worship the creator God of this world, not realizing he is a lesser being. Jesus reveals to Judas alone the true nature of reality. The material world is a prison. The true God dwells beyond, transcendent and unknowable, except through revelation. Jesus came from this divine realm to bring knowledge enabling escape. Judas is the only disciple who comprehends Jesus' teaching. The other disciples remain ignorant, destined to establish a church worshipping the wrong God. Jesus tells Judas that he will surpass all of them, for he will sacrifice the man who clothes Jesus' divine spirit. By betraying Jesus to death, Judas enables the Spirit's release from material entrapment. Rather than villainy, Judas's act is the highest service. The text inverts the traditional narrative. The betrayal becomes necessary and noble. Judas's role is not accidental or sinful, but foreordained and essential. He alone understands what must happen. His reward is not 30 pieces of silver and damnation, but enlightenment and eventual salvation. The Gospel of Judas portrays him as Jesus' closest confidant and truest follower. Why was this text unknown until recently? Irenaeus, a 2nd century church father, mentioned a Gospel of Judas circulated by a Gnostic sect called the Cainites. He condemned it as heretical fabrication. Gnostic texts generally were suppressed as Christianity standardized doctrine in the 4th century. When Emperor Constantine endorsed Christianity and church councils defined orthodoxy, competing versions of the faith were marginalized. Gnostic Gospels contradict core Christian doctrines. They deny the goodness of creation, reject the God of the Old Testament, and offer salvation through knowledge rather than faith in Christ's atoning death. Orthodox Christianity insisted on one God, creator of all, whose material creation was good. Christ's physical resurrection was essential, not a trap to escape. These theological differences were irreconcilable. The Gospel of Judas exemplifies Gnostic reinterpretation of Christian narrative. By making Judas the hero, it inverts conventional morality. Those deemed evil by mainstream religion become enlightened. This appeal to hidden knowledge accessible only to initiates is central to Gnosticism. The text flatters readers. You are like Judas, understanding truths the masses miss. The codex containing the Gospel of Judas suffered severe deterioration. Much of the text is fragmentary, making complete interpretation difficult. Scholars debate translations of key passages. Some argue the text is more ambiguous than initial translation suggested, with Judas's portrayal more negative than first thought. The fragmentary nature leaves room for competing interpretations. The Gospel's existence does not threaten Orthodox Christianity. It is clearly a later Gnostic composition, not an eyewitness account. Historical evidence still points to Judas's betrayal motivated by disappointment, greed, or demonic possession, as the canonical Gospels suggest. The Gospel of Judas shows how different groups reimagine Jesus' story to support their theologies, not how events actually unfolded. Yet the text fascinates because it humanizes Judas. Orthodox Christianity reduced him to a one-dimensional villain, Satan's instrument. The Gospel of Judas, whether historically accurate or not, explores the possibility that Judas acted from conviction, believing he served a higher purpose. It asks uncomfortable questions about free will, destiny, and the cost of fulfilling divine plans. The Gospel also critiques institutional Christianity. The disciples who misunderstand Jesus become the founders of the church. Their ignorance, the text implies, perpetuates through Christian institutions. True knowledge remains hidden, accessible only outside official structures. This anti-institutional message resonates with those who distrust organized religion. The Gospel of Judas was forbidden because it challenged the foundations of Christian orthodoxy. It could not coexist with canonical Gospels. One version had to prevail. The proto-orthodox faction won. Its text became the New Testament, and alternatives were branded heretical and destroyed. The Gospel's survival was accidental, a copy hidden in a jar in Egypt, preserved by dry climate until modern rediscovery. Today the Gospel of Judas is available in translation, its secrets revealed to any reader. It remains forbidden only in the sense that no Christian denomination accepts it as scripture. It exists as a historical artifact, testimony to the diversity of early Christian thought and the contingency of which texts achieved canonical status. The Nag Hammadi Codices. In December 1945, Egyptian farmers digging for fertilizer near the town of Nag Hammadi unearthed a sealed jar. Breaking it open, they found 13 leather-bound books, codices written in Coptic on papyrus. These manuscripts, dating to the 3rd and 4th centuries CE, contained 52 texts, many previously unknown. The Nag Hammadi Library preserves the most extensive collection of Gnostic writings ever discovered. The texts include Gospels attributed to Thomas, Philip, and Mary Magdalene, Apocalypses attributed to Paul, James, and Adam, and theological treatises explaining Gnostic cosmology. They represent diverse Gnostic schools, not a unified movement, showing the variety of esoteric Christian thought in the early centuries. The Gospel of Thomas consists of 114 sayings attributed to Jesus, without narrative framework. Some sayings parallel canonical Gospels, others are unique. If you bring forth what is within you, what you have will save you. If you do not have that within you, what you do not have within you will kill you. The emphasis is on self-knowledge as salvation, a core Gnostic theme. The Gospel of Philip contains esoteric teachings on sacraments, especially the bridal chamber, a ritual uniting the soul with its spiritual counterpart. Marriage serves as metaphor for spiritual union with the divine. Great is the mystery of marriage, for without it the world would not exist. The text values symbolic meaning over literal interpretation. The Gospel of Mary presents Mary Magdalene as Jesus' closest disciple, the one to whom he revealed the deepest mysteries. After Jesus' departure, Mary comforts and teaches the other disciples. Peter objects, questioning whether Jesus would reveal more to a woman than to men. Levi defends Mary, rebuking Peter's jealousy. The text elevates Mary's authority, contrasting with canonical portrayals where she has minimal speaking roles. The Apocryphon of John presents a creation myth where the true God emanates spiritual beings called aeons. One aeon, Sophia, acts without her consort, producing the demiurge Yaldabaoth. This ignorant, arrogant being creates the material world, trapping divine sparks of light within matter. Humanity contains these sparks, which can be awakened through gnosis and returned to the divine realm. The Thunder, Perfect Mind, is a poem spoken by a female divine figure presenting paradoxes. I am the whore and the holy one. I am the wife and the virgin. I am the mother and the daughter. This describes the divine feminine as transcending conventional categories, containing all opposites. The text celebrates divine mystery beyond rational comprehension. Why were these texts buried? The rise of Orthodox Christianity in the 4th century made Gnostic texts dangerous to possess. When Athanasius, Bishop of Alexandria, issued his Easter letter in 367 CE, listing the 27 books of the New Testament as canonical and condemning all others, Gnostic communities faced persecution. Monks from the nearby Pachomian monastery likely hid their library to preserve it from destruction. Gnosticism threatened orthodoxy because it offered an entirely different Christianity, where orthodoxy taught one God, good creation, and salvation through Christ's death and resurrection. Gnosticism taught cosmic dualism, evil matter, and salvation through secret knowledge. Gnostics questioned the Old Testament God's goodness, viewing him as ignorant or malevolent. They saw Jesus' physical body as unimportant or illusory, his teaching of knowledge being primary. Church fathers like Irenaeus, Tertullian, and Hippolytus wrote extensive refutations of Gnosticism. They had access to Gnostic texts, quoting them to demonstrate errors. These polemics were the main source for understanding Gnosticism until the Nag Hammadi discovery. The Church Fathers portrayed Gnosticism as perverse, arrogant, and sexually licentious. Whether these accusations reflected reality or were slander is unclear. The Nag Hammadi texts show Gnostic thought was sophisticated, philosophically complex, and deeply spiritual. Gnostics were not crude heretics, but earnest seekers exploring the nature of God, evil, and salvation. Their answers differed from orthodoxy, but their questions were profound. Why does evil exist? Why is the world full of suffering? How can divine sparks be trapped in corrupt matter? The texts emphasize experiential knowledge over faith. Gnosis is direct encounter with the divine, not intellectual assent to doctrines. This personal, mystical approach to religion threatened institutional authority. If individuals could access divine truth directly, they did not need priests, bishops, or church structures. Gnosticism was inherently anti-hierarchical, valuing personal revelation over institutional teaching. Some Nag Hammadi texts are non-Christian, showing Gnosticism drew from diverse sources. The Corpus Hermeticum appears, connecting Gnosticism to Hermetic philosophy. Excerpts from Plato's Republic are included. Gnostic Christianity synthesized Greek philosophy, Jewish mysticism, Egyptian religion, and Christian teaching into a complex system. The discovery of the Nag Hammadi Codices revolutionized understanding of early Christianity. It revealed that Christianity was far more diverse in its first centuries than later uniformity suggested. Multiple competing versions of the faith existed, each claiming to represent true Christianity. The version that became orthodox was not inherently truer, but better organized, politically connected, and willing to enforce conformity. The texts remain outside Christian canon, but their availability allows modern readers to explore early Christian diversity. They are forbidden in that no church accepts them as scripture, yet their publication means anyone can read them. They challenge the narrative of Christian origins, showing that the path to orthodoxy was neither inevitable nor unopposed. The Necronomicon. The Necronomicon is the most famous grimoire that never existed. Created by horror writer H.P. Lovecraft for his fiction, this imaginary book of forbidden knowledge supposedly contains rituals to summon ancient cosmic entities called the Old Ones. Lovecraft never wrote the Necronomicon itself, only referenced it in his stories as a dreaded tome that drives readers insane with its revelations. Lovecraft described the book's fictional history in detail. The Necronomicon, originally titled Al-Azif, was written in Damascus around 700 CE by Abdul al-Hazred, the Mad Arab. Al-Hazred wandered ruins of ancient civilizations, learned forbidden lore, and eventually transcribed his knowledge into this grimoire. He died horribly, devoured by invisible monsters in a marketplace. The book passed through various hands, translated into Greek, Latin, and English. Copies existed in rare book collections, though most were destroyed. Reading it brings doom. The book describes the Old Ones, primordial beings who ruled Earth before humanity. They were banished to other dimensions, but wait to return when the stars are right. Cthulhu sleeps in the sunken city of R'lyeh. Yog-Sothoth exists beyond the gate between dimensions. Nyarlathotep, the crawling chaos, moves among mortals sowing madness. The Necronomicon contains rituals to contact these beings, incantations in unknown languages, descriptions of their cults. Lovecraft's genius was presenting his fictional mythology as if it were ancient and real. He encouraged friends and fellow writers to reference the Necronomicon in their stories, creating a shared fictional universe. August Derleth, Robert Bloch, and others incorporated Lovecraft's creations into their work, building a pseudo-mythology. After Lovecraft's death in 1937, readers began questioning whether the Necronomicon might actually exist. Libraries reported receiving inquiries about it. Some researchers checked card catalogues for the title. Lovecraft's meticulous fictional history made the book seem plausible. The line between fiction and reality blurred. In 1977, an actual book titled Necronomicon appeared, claiming to be the translation of the original text. It was published under a pseudonym, the editor identified only as Simon. The book contains rituals, sigils, and invocations purportedly from ancient Sumerian tradition. It blends Mesopotamian mythology with Lovecraftian elements, presenting itself as the real inspiration for Lovecraft's fiction. The Simon Necronomicon has no historical basis. It is a modern creation, cobbling together fragments of genuine Sumerian religion with invented material. Actual Sumerian texts do not contain Lovecraft's old ones or their associated rituals. The book is a literary hoax created to capitalize on interest in Lovecraft's work and the occult revival of the 1970s. Despite its fictional origin, some occultists use the Simon Necronomicon as a working grimoire. Chaos magicians, who believe belief itself generates magical power, argue that collective belief in the Necronomicon makes it functionally real. If thousands of people perform its rituals expecting results, they create an egregore, a thought form with power. From this perspective, the book's fictionality is irrelevant. Other versions of the Necronomicon have appeared. In 1980, the Hay Necronomicon, edited by George Hay, claimed to be an authentic translation of a secret text. It too is a fabrication, mixing horror fiction with attempts at creating plausible ancient spells. Multiple authors have produced their own versions, each claiming varying degrees of authenticity or admitting fictionality. The idea of the Necronomicon taps into deep fears and fascinations. Forbidden knowledge that brings doom is a perennial theme. From Prometheus stealing fire to Faust selling his soul, Western culture is filled with warnings about dangerous knowledge. The Necronomicon embodies this archetype perfectly. It offers cosmic understanding at the cost of sanity, power at the cost of damnation. Lovecraft's cosmic horror philosophy underlies the mythology. He believed the universe is vast, ancient, and utterly indifferent to humanity. Our existence is insignificant. The true nature of reality is so alien and horrifying that comprehending it destroys the human mind. The Necronomicon is the vehicle delivering this existential terror. Reading it means confronting humanity's cosmic irrelevance. The book functions as a symbol in Lovecraft's work. It represents the limits of human knowledge and the danger of transgressing them. Scientists, scholars, and occultists in his stories find the Necronomicon and use it, always with catastrophic results. The book is Pandora's box, the apple of knowledge, updated for an era aware of the universe's immensity. The Necronomicon's fictional history includes its repeated suppression. Copies were burned, owners executed, libraries hiding it under restricted access. This mirrors the history of actual forbidden texts. Grimoires like the Key of Solomon or the Lesser Key were condemned by religious authorities, possessions sometimes punishable. Lovecraft borrowed these historical patterns to make his fictional book believable. The Necronomicon is forbidden because it does not exist, yet is treated as if it does. It occupies a liminal space between fiction and reality. It is a modern myth, demonstrating how new mythologies emerge. No ancient Babylonian wrote it, yet it exerts cultural influence. It appears in countless films, books, games, referenced as if everyone knows its existence. The imaginary has become iconically real. The Necronomicon story shows how forbidden knowledge fascinates regardless of factual existence. The idea of a book too dangerous to read, containing truths that shatter minds, appeals to something primal. It promises and threatens simultaneously. That it is fiction does not diminish its power as symbol. The Necronomicon is forbidden because Lovecraft said it was, and we believed him. The Copper Scroll. Among the Dead Sea Scrolls, one text stands apart. The copper scroll is inscribed on metal rather than written on parchment. Discovered in Cave 3 near Qumran in 1952, the scroll consists of 2 rolled copper sheets riveted together. When unrolled, it contained columns of text punched into the metal using a hammer and stylus. The text is a list. It describes 64 locations where enormous quantities of gold, silver, and sacred vessels are supposedly buried or hidden. Each entry provides directions, measurements, and quantities. In the ruin that is in the valley, go down 40 cubits, dig 6 cubits. There are 6 vessels of silver. The specificity suggests real locations and real treasure. The quantities mentioned are staggering: talents of gold and silver, numbers reaching into hundreds of tons of precious metal. If, taken literally, the total value exceeds the treasures of entire kingdoms. Such wealth seems implausible for the Qumran community, which lives simply without signs of material wealth. Where would such treasure come from? One theory proposes the treasure belonged to the Second Temple in Jerusalem. When Romans besieged the city in 70 CE, priests might have hidden temple treasures to prevent Roman seizure. The copper scroll would be a record of these hiding places, created so treasures could be recovered after the crisis. If true, the scroll documents the lost wealth of Solomon's and Herod's temples. Another theory suggests the scroll is fictional, describing imaginary treasure. Perhaps it was a teaching document or literary work. The improbable quantities and vague locations could indicate allegory rather than historical record. The scroll might encode symbolic meanings, with treasure representing spiritual rather than material wealth. Attempts to locate the treasures have failed. The geographical references are ambiguous. Modern landscapes have changed dramatically in 2,000 years. Without precise identification of landmarks, searching is futile. Expeditions have excavated likely locations without success. Either the treasures no longer exist, were already recovered, or the directions cannot be correctly interpreted. The language of the copper scroll differs from other Dead Sea Scrolls. It uses colloquial Mishnaic Hebrew rather than literary Hebrew. This suggests different authorship, perhaps someone outside the Qumran community. The copper medium itself was expensive, chosen for durability. Creating the scroll required significant resources, implying its importance to whoever commissioned it. The scroll mentions specific locations: the fortress, the reservoir of the House of Solomon, the tomb of Zadok's sons, the underground chamber beneath the pavement. Some names are recognizable, others obscure. Scholars debate whether these refer to known structures or use code names. If coded, deciphering them requires knowledge lost 2 millennia ago. One entry mentions additional records. In the pit adjoining on the north, in a hole opening northwards and buried at its mouth, a copy of this text and an explanation and their measurements and an inventory of each thing and other things. This suggests the scroll was not unique, that other copies or explanatory texts existed. None have been found. Why inscribe such information on copper? Parchment degrades, but copper endures. If temple treasures were hidden expecting recovery after generations, a durable medium was essential. Copper also has ritual significance. The temple contained bronze and copper vessels and implements. Using copper for the scroll might connect it symbolically to temple tradition. Skepticism about the treasure's existence is warranted. If the quantities were real and recovered, historical records would mention it. Such wealth could not disappear without trace. The absence of any ancient account of treasure recovery suggests either it was never found or never existed. Yet the scroll's existence demands explanation. Why create an elaborate fake inscribed on expensive copper? The effort seems disproportionate unless the list serves some purpose. Even if not literal treasure locations, the scroll might encode information valuable to its creators. Some researchers propose the scroll is a later creation, perhaps medieval, hidden among genuine Dead Sea Scrolls by mistake or as a hoax. Paleographic analysis and the copper's corrosion patterns suggest it dates to roughly the same period as other scrolls, the 1st century CE. This dating reduces likelihood of medieval fabrication. The copper scroll tantalizes treasure hunters and scholars alike. It promises vast riches while withholding the key to finding them. It exists as a map to nowhere, directions that lead nowhere. a list of wealth that may never have existed. It is forbidden in the sense that its secrets remain locked, inaccessible despite the text's availability. The scroll symbolizes lost knowledge and irrecoverable history. The Second Temple was destroyed, its treasures plundered or hidden. Judaism transformed after this catastrophe, becoming rabbinic rather than priestly, centered on Torah study rather than temple sacrifice. The treasures, if real, belong to a world that ended. The Copper Scroll is a ghost of that vanished reality. The Sumerian King List. An ancient cuneiform document, the Sumerian King List, presents a chronology of kings who ruled Mesopotamia from the beginning of civilization. Multiple copies exist, dating from the Old Babylonian period around 2000 BCE, likely based on earlier sources. The list begins with a striking statement. After the kingship descended from heaven, the kingship was in Eridu. The earliest kings ruled for impossibly long periods. Alulim, the first king of Eridu, reigned for 28,800 years. His successor ruled for 36,000 years. Several kings reigned for tens of thousands of years each. Then came the flood, a catastrophic deluge that swept across the earth. The flood swept over. After the flood had swept over, and the kingship had descended from heaven, the kingship was in Kish. After the flood, kingship resumes, but with shorter reigns, though still superhuman. Kings rule for hundreds or thousands of years. Gradually, as the list progresses through dynasties, reign lengths decrease to humanly plausible durations. By the time the list reaches kings of Akkad and Ur, whose reigns are attested in contemporary documents, the numbers align with historical reality. Scholars debate how to interpret the antediluvian kings and their impossible reigns. One view is mythological. The earliest kings are gods or demigods, not historical humans. Their vast reigns symbolize the primordial age when heaven and earth were closer, when divine beings walked among mortals. The flood separates mythic time from historical time. Another interpretation suggests distorted memory of actual rulers. Perhaps early Sumerian kings did exist, but their reigns were exaggerated through repeated oral transmission over millennia. Numbers were inflated to express the ancientness and importance of these founders. The list preserves names of real individuals obscured by legendary embellishment. A third approach sees the numbers as encoding information in systems we do not understand. Sexagesimal mathematics, base 60, was fundamental to Mesopotamian thought. Astronomical cycles, calendrical systems, and numerical symbolism might explain the figures. The reigns could be metaphorical, representing something other than years. The king list served political functions. It legitimized ruling dynasties by connecting them to an unbroken chain, reaching back to heaven's kingship descending to earth. Each dynasty, regardless of how it obtained power, could claim place in this sacred sequence. The list became a tool for asserting legitimate authority. The mention of the flood is significant. Flood myths are widespread in Mesopotamian literature. The Epic of Gilgamesh contains an extensive flood narrative, where Utnapishtim, warned by the god Ea, builds an ark and survives. Genesis's flood story parallels these Mesopotamian accounts, suggesting shared cultural memory of catastrophic flooding in the region's distant past. Archaeological evidence shows the Mesopotamian plain experienced severe floods multiple times in prehistory. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers periodically flooded catastrophically. Any particularly devastating flood could become mythologized, transformed into a cosmic event in cultural memory. The Sumerian king list places this flood at a critical juncture, separating primordial from historical eras. The list includes cities that dominated Sumer at different times: Eridu, Lhasa, Sippar, Shuruppak, Uruk, Ur, Kish. Each city had its period of supremacy when its kings ruled the region. The list presents this as a single sequence, kingship passing from city to city. In reality, many cities coexisted, sometimes cooperating, often warring. The list simplifies complex political realities into linear narrative. Some kings in the list are known from other sources. Gilgamesh appears, called King of Uruk, ruling 126 years. This aligns with his legendary status, though still superhuman lifespan. Gilgamesh's historicity is debated, but archaeological evidence suggests a real king of Uruk named Gilgamesh existed, later mythologized. The list ends with different dynasties depending on the copy. Some versions terminate with the Isin dynasty around 1700 BCE, others continue later. This suggests the list was a living document, updated as new dynasties arose, each scribe adding contemporary rulers to the ancient chain. Why was this text important enough to copy and preserve for over 1,000 years? It provided cosmic history, explaining civilization's origins. It connected present rulers to divine foundations, giving them sacred legitimacy. It organized complex history into comprehensible narrative. It asserted Mesopotamian civilization's antiquity and divine sanction. The Sumerian king list is forbidden not through suppression, but through its resistance to literal interpretation. It frustrates modern demands for factual accuracy. Its blend of myth and history, its impossible numbers alongside verified rulers, creates confusion. It cannot be read straightforwardly as history or dismissed entirely as fiction. The text represents how ancient peoples understood time and kingship. For them, the distant past was different in kind, not just degree. Gods and humans intermingled. Time flowed differently. Extraordinary lifespans were conceivable because the cosmos itself was younger, more energetic. The flood marked transition to the current age where humans are mortal and separated from divine immediacy. The list survives as testimony to Sumerian worldview. It is their origin story, their genealogy connecting present to primordial. It is forbidden in the sense that accepting its claims requires abandoning modern historical methodologies. It demands we enter a mindset where myth and history are inseparable, where numbers symbolize meaning beyond quantity, where kingship descends from heaven rather than emerging from human politics. The Pyramid Texts. Inside the Pyramid of Unas, last pharaoh of Egypt's 5th dynasty, archaeologists enter in the burial chamber in 1881, found walls covered with hieroglyphic inscriptions. These are the Pyramid Texts, the oldest religious literature from ancient Egypt, dating to approximately 2300 BCE. Later pyramids of the 6th dynasty also contain these spells, covering walls of burial chambers and antechambers. The texts consist of spells, hymns, and ritual instructions intended to assist the deceased pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. They ensure his resurrection, transformation, and ascension to the sky, where he joins the imperishable stars. The spells are not coherent narrative, but collections of formulas, each addressing specific aspects of post-death existence. Many spells invoke the gods. Re, the sun god, Osiris, god of the underworld, Horus, the falcon god, Atum, the creator. The pharaoh is identified with these gods, asserting his divine nature. Unas is a god, son of a god. He merges with Re, sailing the celestial bark across the sky. He becomes Osiris, ruling the dead. He is Horus, avenging his father's murder. The texts assert the pharaoh's transformation into divine being. The journey to the sky involves obstacles and dangers. Gates guarded by fierce beings must be passed. The pharaoh must know secret names, passwords granting entry. Spells provide this knowledge. O doorkeeper of the northern sky, tell your name. I know you and I know your name. Knowing the name gives power over the entity. Some spells are violent. The pharaoh consumes the gods, incorporating their powers. The king feeds on their entrails. He eats their magic, swallows their spirits. This cannibalistic imagery shocks modern readers, but represents metaphorical appropriation of divine attributes. By devouring the gods, the pharaoh becomes greater than them, supreme in the afterlife. Other texts ensure the pharaoh's physical needs are met. He requires food, drink, clothing. Spells command offerings to appear. Priests performing funerary cult for the deceased pharaoh recite these spells while presenting actual offerings. The words make offerings magically eternal, sustaining the pharaoh forever. The ladder to heaven is a recurring motif. The pharaoh ascends a ladder erected by the gods, climbing from earth to sky. Spells call on deities to steady the ladder, ensure safe ascent. Set has erected the ladder for the king, and Horus has raised the ladder for his father. The ladder connects two realms, allowing transition from mortal to divine. The field of reeds is the Egyptian paradise, a place of fertile fields, abundant water, eternal harvest. The pharaoh ploughs, sows, and reaps alongside the gods. He lives in blessed existence, free from want. Spells ensure his arrival and permanent residence in this blessed realm. The texts contain archaic language, even for ancient Egyptians. By the time they were inscribed in pyramids, some spells were already centuries old, copied from earlier sources. Scribes sometimes did not fully understand the language, making errors or offering variant readings. This linguistic obscurity adds to the text's mystique and difficulty of interpretation. The pyramid texts were exclusive to royalty. Only pharaohs had access to these spells initially. Commoners were not expected to achieve the same afterlife. They died and remained in tombs, while pharaohs ascended to divine realms. This exclusivity reinforced the pharaoh's special status as intermediary between human and divine. Later, the pyramid texts evolved into the coffin texts of the Middle Kingdom, inscribed on coffins of nobles and officials. By the New Kingdom, further evolution produced the Book of the Dead, written on papyri and available to anyone who could afford a copy. This democratization of afterlife knowledge reflects changing Egyptian society and religious beliefs. The texts were rediscovered in the late 19th century when archaeologists first entered 5th and 6th dynasty pyramids. Until then, Old Kingdom pyramids were thought empty of inscriptions. The discovery revolutionized understanding of Egyptian religion, providing direct evidence of beliefs from Egypt's earliest history. Translation remains challenging. Many spells are fragmentary or corrupt. Hieroglyphic writing, especially religious texts, can be deliberately ambiguous, using puns, multiple meanings, visual symbolism. The texts were not meant for casual reading, but for ritual recitation by trained priests who understood nuances. The pyramid texts reveal Egyptian concerns about death and what follows. Death is a transition, dangerous but navigable, with proper knowledge and divine assistance. The afterlife is not punishment or reward for moral behavior, but a continuation of existence in transformed state. The pharaoh's divinity ensures his successful transition. The spells facilitate and confirm it. Some spells address fear of being forgotten. His name is in the sky, his body is in the underworld. The pharaoh's memory must persist among the living. His name spoken in offerings keeps him alive. This fear of oblivion drives elaborate tombs, inscriptions, and cults. Death is final only if memory fades. The texts are forbidden in the sense that they were hidden inside sealed pyramids, accessible only to the pharaoh's Kai, his spiritual double. Living people were not meant to see them. They were magical formulas, activating automatically when the pharaoh died. Their secrecy ensured potency. Widespread knowledge might dilute power. Modern scholarship makes the texts available, translated into modern languages. Anyone can read spells once reserved for God's walking earth, yet their full meaning remains partially obscured. Cultural context, ritual performance, religious conviction all shaped their original function. Reading them now, stripped of context, we grasp their surface while depths elude us. The pyramid texts stand as humanity's earliest extensive religious literature. They show sophisticated theology, complex mythology, deep concern with post-death existence. They demonstrate that questions of meaning, mortality, and transcendence occupied human minds 5,000 years ago as urgently as today. The texts are bridges to that remote consciousness. Voices from the depths of history, speaking words intended to conquer death. The Enuma Elish. On 7 clay tablets written in Akkadian cuneiform, the Enuma Elish recounts the Babylonian creation of the world. The text dates to approximately 1200 BCE, though it draws on earlier Sumerian myths. It was recited annually during the Akitu festival celebrating the new year, reinforcing the cosmic order and the supremacy of Babylon's patron god, Marduk. The epic begins with primordial chaos. Apsu, the sweet water, and Tiamat, the salt water, mingle their waters, generating the first gods. These younger gods are noisy, disturbing Apsu's rest. He plans to destroy them. But Ea, god of wisdom, discovers the plot and kills Apsu, establishing his dwelling on Apsu's body. From Ea and his consort, Marduk is born, the greatest of gods. Tiamat, enraged by Apsu's death, prepares for war. She creates monstrous beings, serpents, dragons, the scorpion man, demons. She elevates King, her second consort, to lead her army. The younger gods panic, unable to face Tiamat's wrath. They turn to Marduk, offering him kingship of the gods if he defeats Tiamat. Marduk accepts, armed with winds, lightning, a bow, a net, and a mace. He confronts Tiamat. The battle is cosmic. Marduk catches Tiamat in his net, sends winds into her mouth to inflate her, then shoots an arrow through her belly, splitting her heart. He tramples her corpse, kills her demon army, binds Kingu in chains. From Tiamat's body, Marduk creates the world. He splits her like a shellfish, using half to form the sky, half for the earth. He establishes the positions of stars, sets the courses of sun and moon, assigns domains to the gods. Order emerges from chaos through Marduk's victory. The cosmos is Tiamat's corpse transformed into habitable reality. Marduk then decides to create humanity. He commands Ea to make humans from the blood of Kingu, the instigator of rebellion. Kingu is executed, his blood mixed with clay, and humans are formed. The purpose of humanity is explicit: to serve the gods, perform their labour, maintain their temples, provide offerings. Humans are slaves created to free gods from work. The gods build Babylon and Marduk's temple, Esagila. They celebrate, feast, and proclaim Marduk's 50 names, each expressing an aspect of his power. The epic ends with Marduk enthroned as supreme god, the cosmos ordered under his rule, humanity created to serve, and Babylon established as the axis of the world. The Enuma Elish served political purposes. Babylon rose to dominance in Mesopotamia during the Old Babylonian period. The epic legitimizes Babylon's supremacy by making its god the supreme deity. Marduk was not originally the chief god. Older cities had older gods. By narrating Marduk's rise through combat and wisdom, the epic justifies Babylon's political ascendancy as cosmic necessity. The text replaces older myths where Enlil or Anu held primacy. Those earlier stories are rewritten with Marduk as hero. This theological revision mirrors political reality. Babylon conquered rivals, so Marduk conquered other gods. Religion and politics were inseparable in ancient Mesopotamia. The creation from a slain god's body appears in other cultures. Tiamat is the chaos dragon, embodiment of primordial disorder. Marduk, representing order and civilization, defeats chaos, establishing cosmos. This myth encodes the perennial struggle between order and entropy, structure and dissolution. Civilization constantly battles chaos. Marduk's victory must be ritually reenacted to maintain cosmic stability. Humanity's creation from a rebel god's blood is telling. We are made from violence, born from punishment. Our nature is tainted from the start, requiring divine control. Yet we are also divine in origin, containing divine blood. This ambiguity defines the human condition in Babylonian thought. Lowly servants, but carrying spark of divinity. The emphasis on naming is significant. In Mesopotamian belief, knowing something's true name grants power over it. Marduk's 50 names enumerate his attributes, giving worshippers words to invoke his power. Speaking the names ritually binds Marduk to his functions, ensures he fulfills his cosmic roles. The Enuma Elish was not secret in ancient Babylon. It was public, recited during festivals before crowds. Its forbidden nature arises later. As Christianity and Islam replaced Mesopotamian religions, these myths became heretical. Worshipping Marduk and acknowledging Tiamat as primordial mother contradicted monotheistic teaching. The text was forgotten, buried under centuries of sand. 19th century archaeologist excavating Nineveh found tablets containing the Enuma Elish. Translation revealed a worldview utterly different from biblical creation. No single omnipotent creator speaking the world into being, but multiple gods, battling, stumbling toward creating cosmos, almost accidentally. No inherent goodness in creation, but pragmatic formation from slain enemies' corpse. Comparative mythology noticed parallels between the Enuma Elish and Genesis. Both begin with watery chaos. Tiamat and Tehom, the Hebrew word for deep, are linguistically related. Both involve separating waters, creating firmament, establishing celestial bodies, making humanity last. These similarities suggest Genesis was influenced by Mesopotamian creation myths, adapting them to monotheistic framework. This discovery disturbs some believers who assume biblical accounts were wholly unique divine revelation. Finding them paralleled in pagan myths suggested cultural borrowing rather than direct divine inspiration. The Enuma Elish thus became forbidden not through ancient suppression, but through challenging religious orthodoxy's claims to unique truth. The text itself is powerful mythic poetry. The battle scenes are vivid. Tiamat's creation of monsters evokes primal fear. Marduk's triumph is exhilarating. The cosmic architecture built from her corpse is imaginative. The epic communicates through image and action rather than abstract philosophy. It shows rather than explains, inviting listeners into the mythic world. The Enuma Elish provides a window into Babylonian consciousness. It shows what they believed about origins, divinity, humanity's purpose. It reveals their values: order over chaos, kingship justified by power, service to gods as human duty. It demonstrates their narrative skill, their poetic tradition, their ritual practices. The text is forbidden because it represents replaced religion. Marduk's temples are ruins, his worship is dead, yet the myth survives, voice from vanished civilization. It speaks of struggles and fears still resonant, chaos threatening order, mortality seeking meaning, humans navigating between divine and earthly. The Enuma Elish is ancient, alien, yet touches something timeless in human experience. The Book of the Heavenly Cow. On the walls of Egyptian royal tombs from the New Kingdom, a myth is inscribed, describing how humanity rebelled against the gods and the terrible punishment that followed. The Book of the Heavenly Cow tells how Re, the sun god, aged and grew weak. Humans began to mock him, plotting rebellion against divine rule. Re summoned his council of gods, including Nu, Shu, Tefnut, Geb, and Nut, asking advice on how to punish human insolence. The gods counselled sending Re's eye, his fiery aspect, to destroy rebellious humanity. The eye transformed into Hathor, goddess of love and joy, but in her destructive form as Sekhmet, the lioness. Sekhmet descended to earth and began slaughtering humans. She waded through blood, delighting in carnage. Humanity faced extinction. Re watched the slaughter and felt pity. He decided to save the remnant of humanity, but Sekhmet's bloodlust would not easily stop. She had tasted blood and craved more. Re devised a plan. He ordered vast quantities of beer brewed, mixed with red ochre to resemble blood. 7,000 jars were poured over the fields where Sekhmet would hunt the next morning. At dawn, Sekhmet saw the red liquid covering the ground. Thinking it blood from previous victims, she drank deeply. The beer intoxicated her. She became drunk, forgot her rage, transformed back into Hathor, gentle and benign. Humanity was spared, though decimated. Those who survived cowered before the gods, rebellion crushed. Re, weary from the violence and ungoverned humanity, decided to withdraw from Earth. He could no longer dwell among such treacherous beings. The goddess Nut, in the form of the heavenly cow, offered to carry him. Re climbed onto her back. Nut rose into the sky, lifting Re away from Earth. Her forelegs became the pillars holding up the heavens. Shu, god of air, supported her belly. Thus the current cosmic order was established. Re in the distant sky, travelling daily across Nut's body, unreachable by humans. This myth explains several aspects of Egyptian cosmology. It accounts for why the gods no longer walk among humans as they supposedly did in the Golden Age. Human rebellion and divine punishment created separation. It explains death's entry into the world. Before the slaughter, humans were implied to be immortal, or at least unafflicted by death. It establishes the sky's structure. Nut as cow, legs at cardinal points, Shu holding her up. The text contains ritual instructions. Specific spells and images from the myth were to be drawn on objects or recited during ceremonies. These rituals reenacted the myth, ensuring cosmic order's maintenance. By ritually depicting Nut as cow-carrying Re, Egyptians participated in sustaining the heavens. The myth's moral is submission. Humanity's proper place is servitude to gods. Rebellion brings destruction. Humans survive only through divine mercy, which can be withdrawn. The gods are not unconditionally benevolent, but capable of exterminating their creations if sufficiently provoked. The story parallels other deluge myths. Instead of flood, the agent of destruction is divine wrath, personified as bloodthirsty goddess. Like Noah's flood or Mesopotamian deluges, a remnant survives through divine decision to halt annihilation. These parallels suggest cross-cultural anxiety about human vulnerability to catastrophic divine judgment. The transformation of Hathor into Sekhmet and back demonstrates Egyptian divine fluidity. Gods were not fixed personalities, but forces with multiple aspects. Hathor, goddess of love, music, motherhood, could become Sekhmet, goddess of plague and destruction. This duality reflects nature's ambiguity. The sun nurtures crops but also brings scorching drought. Love can turn to rage. Creation and destruction are intertwined. The beer used to stop Sekhmet highlights beer's importance in Egyptian culture. Beer was daily sustenance, offering to gods, and ritual substance. Using beer to trick a goddess elevates it to cosmic significance. The red ochre mixed in connects to festival practices where participants consumed red-coloured beer ritually. The Book of the Heavenly Cow appears in tombs of pharaohs, Seti the Firm, Ramesses II, Ramesses III, and Tutankhamun. Its inclusion in royal burials indicates its importance in royal afterlife beliefs. The pharaoh needed to understand cosmic order, humanity's place, and divine power. The myth reminded him of God's supremacy, even as he himself was deified. Scholars debate when the myth originated. Its language and style suggest Middle Kingdom composition, though surviving copies date later. It may have been transmitted orally before being inscribed in tombs. The myth's themes of divine withdrawal and human mortality are timeless, possibly dating to Egypt's earliest religious thought. The text is not long, fitting on single tomb walls, but it is dense with meaning. Every element carries symbolic weight. Nut's bovine form representing the sky's nurturing aspect. Re's daily journey as the sun's visible path. Sekhmet's rage as natural disasters and plagues. Beer as both literal and symbolic salvation. Why is this myth considered forbidden? It reveals divine violence against humanity, challenging ideas of benevolent gods. It shows deities as capricious, willing to exterminate their creations. It denies humans inherent worth, portraying us as rebellious slaves deserving destruction. Such bleak theology disturbs those seeking comfort in religion. The myth was exclusive to royal tombs initially, not accessible to commoners. Its message was for pharaohs, reminding them of their mediating role between gods and humans. Pharaohs inherited responsibility for maintaining Ma'at, cosmic order. They prevented humanity's complete destruction through proper worship and governance. The Book of the Heavenly Cow survives in hieroglyphs on ancient walls. Tourists and scholars can see it, though most pass without understanding. Its language is archaic, even by ancient Egyptian standards. Translation captures surface meaning, but not the mythic resonance felt by believers. The text is open yet closed, visible yet obscure, offering its secrets reluctantly to those who study it deeply. The myth speaks to perennial human fears, divine anger, existential vulnerability, the distance between us and higher powers. It acknowledges darkness in divine nature, refusing to sanitize gods into pure goodness. This unflinching portrayal of divinity's terror makes the text powerful and disturbing. It is forbidden because it tells uncomfortable truths about power, hierarchy, and humanity's precarious position in a cosmos ruled by beings who could crush us effortlessly but choose for now to let us live. The Orphic Hymns. In ancient Greece, a mystery tradition existed surrounding Orpheus, the legendary musician whose songs charmed animals, trees, and even stones. The Orphic mysteries taught esoteric doctrines about the soul's nature, its origin, and its journey through reincarnation toward eventual purification. The Orphic Hymns, a collection of 87 short poems, preserve elements of this tradition. The hymns were used in Orphic rituals, addressed to various gods and cosmic forces. Each hymn invokes a deity, praising attributes and requesting blessings. They were sung or chanted during ceremonies, likely accompanied by music. The language is rich with epithets, poetic imagery, and mythological references. The hymns address both Olympian gods and more obscure entities. Zeus, Hera, Apollo, and Athena appear alongside Protagoras, the primordial firstborn god. Phanes, the divine light, and Night, the primal darkness. This pantheon reflects Orphic cosmology, which differed from mainstream Greek religion. Orphic theology taught that the soul is divine, a fragment of divinity trapped in the physical body. The body is a tomb, soma sema. The soul reincarnates through multiple lives, purifying itself through righteous living and initiation into mysteries. Only after sufficient purification can the soul escape the cycle of birth and rebirth, returning to divine source. The myth central to Orphism involves Dionysus Zagreus. The infant Dionysus was torn apart and devoured by Titans. Zeus punished the Titans by blasting them with lightning. From the ashes, humanity was created. Thus, humans contain both Titanic material, representing the body's base nature, and Dionysian divine essence, representing the soul. This dual nature explains human struggle between physical desires and spiritual aspirations. The Orphic hymns emphasize purification. Participants in Orphic rites underwent rituals cleansing them of miasma, spiritual pollution from past deeds or past lives. Vegetarianism was practiced, avoiding meat that might contain reincarnated souls. Certain foods were forbidden, taboos marking initiates as separate from ordinary society. The hymn to Night invokes primal darkness, mother of gods and men. Night is not evil, but a generative force, the womb from which existence emerged. Calling upon Night seeks blessings of prophecy and dreams, as night is when visions come. The hymn portrays darkness as necessary counterpart to light, both aspects of divine reality. The hymn to Protagoras, the firstborn, describes the original deity from whom all others descended. Protagoras is hermaphroditic, containing male and female in unity, embodying the wholeness preceding differentiation. This god is rarely mentioned in mainstream Greek religion, but central to Orphic cosmology. The hymn to Eros invokes love as a cosmic force, not merely attraction between individuals. Eros binds the universe together, creates harmony from chaos, drives generation and creation. This philosophical understanding of love influenced later Platonic thought, where Eros becomes the soul's longing for divine beauty. The hymns invoke Persephone, queen of the underworld, frequently. Orpheus's myth involves his descent to the underworld to retrieve his wife Eurydice, so Persephone holds special significance in Orphic tradition. She represents the soul's journey into death and potential return to life. Central themes in Orphic eschatology. Why were the Orphic hymns and related teachings considered forbidden or marginal? Mainstream Greek religion was civic and public, focused on communal worship of Olympian gods through state-sponsored festivals. Orphism was private, esoteric, offering individual salvation through secret knowledge and initiatory rites. This separateness made it suspect. The Orphic belief in reincarnation contradicted standard Greek views. Homer's underworld was populated by shades, weakened ghosts of the dead, not souls cycling through rebirths. Orphism offered hope of escaping death's finality, but this hope came with strict ethical demands and mystical practices that mainstream religion did not require. Some philosophers, particularly Plato, found Orphic ideas appealing. Plato's discussion of the soul's immortality, its pre-existence, and reincarnation draws on Orphic tradition. Yet Plato also criticized wandering Orphic priests who sold initiations and absolutions, promising to cleanse sins for fees. The tradition's commercialization bred skepticism about its authenticity. The Orphic hymns survive because they were copied in late antiquity, possibly by Neoplatonist philosophers who valued ancient mystical traditions. The poems themselves are beautiful, demonstrating Greek poetic skill and theological imagination. They provide insight into alternative religious currents beneath classical Greece's well-known civic religion. The hymns are not dogmatic texts, but ritual tools. They evoke divine presence through language, music, and ceremonial context. Reading them now, divorced from ritual performance, we experience them differently than ancient initiates. The words remain, but the power they activated through ritual is lost. The Orphic hymns are forbidden in the sense that they were exclusive to initiates. Mystery religions protected their teachings, revealing them only to those properly prepared through initiation. Speaking mysteries publicly was forbidden, sometimes punishable by death. The hymns themselves might be sung publicly, but their deeper meanings were explained only to initiates in private ceremonies. The tradition claimed descent from Orpheus, who visited the underworld and returned, gaining forbidden knowledge of death and what follows. His songs contain this knowledge, passed to initiates. Whether a historical Orpheus existed is doubtful, but the mythical figure represented inspired poet-prophet accessing divine wisdom through music. The Orphic hymns are windows into Greek mysticism. They show Greeks grappling with meaning beyond civic duty and Olympian worship. They sought personal salvation, direct experience of divinity, understanding of the soul's nature. These concerns are perennial, appearing across cultures and eras. The Orphic hymns are one expression of humanity's mystical impulse, using Greek language and mythology, but addressing universal questions about existence, suffering, and transcendence. The Eleusinian Mysteries texts. For nearly 2,000 years, the sanctuary at Eleusis near Athens hosted the most famous mystery religion of the ancient world. The Eleusinian Mysteries honoured Demeter, goddess of grain, and her daughter Persephone. Tens of thousands of initiates participated over the centuries, including Plato, Aristotle, Cicero, and emperors like Marcus Aurelius. Yet the central teachings and rituals remained secret. Initiates were forbidden to reveal what they experienced on pain of death. No complete description of the mysteries survives. What we know comes from fragments, allusions in literature, architectural remains, and inscriptions. Ancient authors mention the mysteries reverently, but provide no details. They speak of initiates experiencing something transformative, something that changed their understanding of death and offered hope for the afterlife. But they never say explicitly what occurred. The myth underlying the mysteries is well known. Persephone, picking flowers, was abducted by Hades, god of the underworld. Demeter, in grief and rage, searched the earth for her daughter. In her sorrow, she withheld fertility from the land. Crops failed. Famine threatened humanity. Zeus finally intervened, compelling Hades to release Persephone. But Persephone had eaten pomegranate seeds in the underworld, binding her to return for part of each year. The compromise established, Persephone spends 2/3 of the year with her mother above ground, 1/3 below with Hades. Demeter's joy and sorrow at her daughter's annual departure and return create the seasons. Initiation occurred in autumn during the greater mysteries. Lesser mysteries in spring were preparatory. Candidates gathered in Athens, then walked the sacred way to Eleusis, a 15-mile procession. At Eleusis they fasted, perhaps consuming kaikon, a barley drink possibly containing psychoactive ergot alkaloids. Then they entered the telesterion, the great initiation hall. Inside the telesterion, something was revealed. Ancient sources use the term epoptia, seeing. The core experience was visual, but what was seen? Speculation abounds. Perhaps a sacred drama, reenacting Persephone's abduction and return, perhaps sacred objects displayed, ears of grain, symbols of rebirth, perhaps visions induced by Kaikion's psychoactive properties, revealing divine realities. One provocative theory suggests Kaikion contained ergot, a fungus growing on barley that produces compounds similar to LSD. If so, initiates experience powerful hallucinogenic visions, encountering gods directly in mystical states. This would explain the mystery's transformative power and initiate's lifelong silence. How could one describe ineffable visions to the uninitiated? Other theories propose more symbolic revelations. The display of a single ear of wheat could symbolize life's cycle, seed buried in earth, sprouting, growing, harvested, seed again. This simple image encodes profound truth about death and renewal. Persephone's story is nature's cycle personified. Understanding this deeply, experiencing it emotionally in ritual context, could transform one's attitude toward mortality. The mysteries promise better fate after death. Initiates hoped for blessed existence in the afterlife, while the uninitiated faced shadowy half-life in Hades. This promise made initiation highly desirable. The mysteries offered what civic religion did not: personal salvation, hope beyond death, assurance that life's suffering had meaning. The hymn to Demeter, a Homeric hymn dating to 7th century BCE, tells Demeter's myth but omits what was revealed at Eleusis. The poem ends with Demeter establishing her mysteries and declaring their secrecy. Blessed is he among men on earth who has seen these mysteries, but he who is uninitiate and has no part in them never has lot of like good things once he is dead, down in the darkness and gloom. This tantalizing statement reveals nothing substantive. Christian fathers condemn the mysteries as demonic deceptions. Clement of Alexandria wrote dismissively, claiming the mysteries consisted of displaying sexual symbols, engaging in obscene acts. His accounts are propagandistic, aimed at discrediting pagan religion. Yet even he does not reveal the mysteries' core teachings, either because he did not know them, or because secrecy was so ingrained he dared not break it. The mysteries ended in 393 CE when the Roman Emperor Theodosius banned pagan worship. Christian zealots destroyed the sanctuary at Eleusis. The last hierophants, the high priests who knew the full mysteries, died without passing on knowledge. The tradition, maintained for nearly 2 millennia, abruptly ended. The secrets were lost. Archaeology has excavated Eleusis, revealing the telesterion structure, a large hall capable of holding thousands, with tiered seating and an interior chamber called the Anacteron, the palace where the most sacred objects were kept. This chamber was off limits except to the Hierophant. What it contained is unknown. The mystery's impact on Greek culture was profound. They united participants across social, classes, and city-states. Slaves, women, and foreigners could be initiated, unusual for ancient religions typically restricted by gender, status, or ethnicity. The mysteries transcended divisions, offering shared spiritual experience. Philosophers found the mysteries fascinating. Plato's teachings about the soul, immortality, and the forms may have been influenced by initiatic experience. His allegory of the cave, where prisoners see only shadows until one escapes into sunlight, parallels mysteric revelation, emerging from ignorance into truth. Whether Plato's philosophy stems from Eleusinian experience or he projected his philosophy onto it is debated. The Eleusinian mysteries are forbidden in the most complete sense. Their teachings were deliberately kept secret for religious reasons. Initiates took vows of silence, enforced by severe penalties. The tradition ended without transmitting its knowledge. Modern scholars can reconstruct externals, but cannot recover the inner experience. The mysteries remain mysterious. This absolute secrecy contrasts with other ancient religions. Egyptian priests recorded temple rituals. Jewish scripture preserves teachings. Mystery religions alone maintain total discretion. This was not suppression by authorities, but self-imposed discipline. Initiates believed revelation was sacred, too holy for casual speech. Silence was reverence. The fascination with the Eleusinian mysteries demonstrates human hunger for transcendence. We want to know what those tens of thousands experience. We want access to the transformation they claimed. Yet the mysteries remain closed. We stand outside the telesterion, unable to enter. The texts that would explain are texts that were never written. The Eleusinian mysteries are forbidden because they are lost, hidden by time, and initiate successful secrecy, remaining the most perfectly kept secret in ancient history. The Sibylline Books. In ancient Rome, a collection of prophetic texts called the Sibylline Books was consulted during crises to determine divine will and prescribe rituals to appease the gods. These books were among Rome's most sacred possessions, guarded by a special college of priests. Their origins were shrouded in legend, their contents secret, their influence immense. Legend claimed that Tarquinius Superbus, Rome's last king, was approached by an old woman, the Cumaean Sibyl, offering 9 books of prophecies. She demanded an exorbitant price. The king refused. The Sibyl burned 3 books and offered the remaining 6 at the same price. Again the king refused. She burned 3 more, offering the final 3 at the original price. Tarquin, realizing these books were valuable, purchased the last 3. They were deposited in the Temple of Jupiter on the Capitoline Hill, consulted only in dire emergencies. The books were written in Greek hexameter verse, supposedly containing prophecies about Rome's future. They were not read as predictions, but consulted when disasters struck. Plagues, famines, military defeats. The Senate would order the priestly college to consult the books, seeking guidance on what rituals or religious innovations would restore divine favor. The priests who accessed the books, initially 2, later increased to 15, were sworn to secrecy. They studied the text and reported recommendations without revealing specific prophecies. The books directed introduction of foreign cults and rituals. The worship of Greek gods, like Apollo and Ceres, entered Rome through Sibylline instruction. During crises, the books prescribed ludi, religious games, lectisternia, sacred banquets for gods, or supplications, public prayers. The original books were destroyed when the Temple of Jupiter burned in 83 BCE. A new collection was assembled from various sources, other Sibylline oracles from Greek cities, prophetic texts from throughout the Mediterranean. This reconstructed collection, though claiming to replicate the original, was different. Scholars inserted what they believed conformed to Sibylline tradition. Augustus Caesar, Rome's first emperor, took control of the books, moving them to the Temple of Apollo on the Palatine. He had them edited, removing spurious or politically inconvenient prophecies. The books became tools of imperial policy, consulted to legitimize Augustus's rule and religious reforms. Over time, Jewish and Christian writers produced their own Sibylline oracles, imitating the style but promoting monotheism. These texts survive, unlike the authentic Roman Sibylline books. The pseudo-Sibylline writings contain prophecies about biblical events, predictions of Rome's fall, apocalyptic visions. They used the Sibyl's authority to spread religious propaganda disguised as ancient prophecy. The genuine Roman Sibylline books were destroyed or lost by late antiquity. When Stilicho, a Christian general, ordered remaining pagan religious objects destroyed in 405 CE, the books were likely among them. No copies survive. Their contents are known only through references in Roman literature. What made the Sibylline books powerful was their controlled access. Only specific priests could read them, and they never revealed actual text, only interpretations. This secrecy allowed the books to maintain authority. If published, they could be debated, questioned, analysed. Hidden, they were unchallengeable. Their mystique depended on concealment. The books were forbidden to the public, not by external suppression, but by Roman state policy. The Senate restricted access to preserve the books' sacredness and political utility. Revealing their contents would diminish their power. Secrecy was the source of authority. Modern scholars debate what the books actually contained. Were they genuine prophetic texts, products of religious fervour and divination, or were they deliberately vague verses, open to interpretation, usable to justify any policy priests or Senate wished to pursue? The latter seems more likely. Ambiguous prophecies can be interpreted to support predetermined conclusions, giving divine sanction to political decisions. The consultation process illustrates this. The Senate decided when crises warranted consulting the books. The priestly college interpreted the text, but senators controlled whether to follow recommendations. The system allowed political and religious authority to collaborate, presenting united front of divine and human will. The Sibylline books represented Rome's anxiety about maintaining divine favour. Romans believed their success depended on Pax Deorum, peace with the gods. Disasters indicated divine displeasure. The books provided mechanisms to restore favour through prescribed rituals. This belief system gave Romans sense of control. If misfortune struck, they had means to address it. The books also facilitated cultural adaptation. Rome absorbed conquered peoples, integrating their gods into Roman religion. The Sibylline books justified this, portraying incorporation of foreign deities as divinely mandated. This religious flexibility strengthened Roman unity, allowing diverse populations to see their gods honoured in Rome. Christianity's rise made the Sibylline books irrelevant. Christian emperors saw them as pagan superstition. The book's destruction marked Rome's transformation from pagan to Christian empire. The old gods' oracles were silenced, replaced by biblical prophecy and church authority. The loss of the Sibylline books is tragedy for scholarship. They would illuminate Roman religion, politics, and cultural evolution. Their prophecies might reveal how Romans understood their destiny, what fears and hopes they harboured. Instead, we have only fragments, second-hand references, leaving the book's actual content mysterious. The Sibylline books are forbidden because they were deliberately kept secret and then destroyed. Their secrets died with them. They represent knowledge that was controlled, weaponized, and ultimately obliterated. They are a cautionary tale about texts whose power derived from concealment, which vanished when that concealment became permanent. The Turin Erotic Papyrus. Among ancient Egyptian artifacts, the Turin Erotic Papyrus is uniquely explicit. Discovered in Deir el-Medina, the workers' village near the Valley of the Kings, this papyrus dates to approximately 1150 BCE during the 20th dynasty. It depicts, in vivid detail, a series of sexual encounters between a man and a woman in various positions. The artwork is skilled, the content unambiguous. The papyrus is fragmentary, partially damaged, but enough survives to shock modern viewers. The man is depicted as balding, overweight, somewhat comic. The woman is beautiful, adorned with jewellery. They engage in a dozen different sexual positions, each scene showing explicit anatomy and activity. The man appears vigorous despite his unprepossessing appearance. The woman seems enthusiastic, sometimes dominant. Accompanying the scenes are brief hieratic captions, though many are damaged or lost. The surviving texts are fragmentary, making full interpretation difficult. Some scholars suggest the papyrus satirizes the wealthy or priest, showing them as lustful despite their social pretensions. Others propose it served as erotic entertainment, commissioned by someone in the workers' village who could afford such luxury. The artistic quality indicates a skilled scribe artist created it. This was not crude graffiti, but professionally executed work. The figures' proportions, the decorative details, the careful composition show trained hand. Creating such work required time, materials, and skill, suggesting the patron valued the piece. Egyptian attitudes towards sex were more open than later Western cultures influenced by Christianity. Sexual activity was natural, necessary for procreation, pleasurable. Gods engaged in sex. Creation myths involved divine ejaculation, masturbation, intercourse. Fertility was celebrated. Images of genitalia appeared as amulets and offerings. Yet explicit depictions of human sexual activity are rare in surviving art. Why create such a papyrus? Several theories exist. It might be satire, mocking someone recognizable to the original audience. The man's comical appearance contrasts with his sexual prowess, perhaps poking fun at pretensions. Alternatively, it could be straightforward erotica, created for private enjoyment. Every culture produces erotic material. Egypt would be no exception. Some scholars suggest magical or religious purposes. Sexual imagery sometimes appeared in fertility rituals. The papyrus might have been used in ceremonies promoting conception or celebrating sexual vitality. However, the comedic tone argues against solemn religious use. The papyrus was found among possessions of workers at Deir el-Medina, the community of artisans who built and decorated royal tombs. These workers were literate, skilled, relatively well compensated. They created art for pharaohs, but also for themselves. The erotic papyrus might represent their private culture, leisure entertainment away from official constraints. The papyrus's survival is fortunate. Organic materials like papyrus decay quickly except in Egypt's dry climate. Most Egyptian documents are lost. That this survived suggests it was valued, kept safely, perhaps hidden. Its explicit nature meant it would not be displayed publicly, increasing chances of preservation in storage. Modern reception has been mixed. Museums possessing fragments sometimes restrict display, considering the content too explicit. The papyrus challenges assumptions about ancient Egyptian prudishness. Victorians who romanticized ancient Egypt as spiritually pure culture were scandalized by evidence Egyptians enjoyed erotic art. The Turin erotic papyrus is forbidden not through ancient suppression, but through modern discomfort. Museums censor it. Scholars sometimes avoid discussing it. Reproductions are limited. This modern censorship contrasts with ancient openness. The Egyptians who created and enjoyed this papyrus saw nothing wrong with it. Our discomfort reflects our cultural attitudes, not theirs. The papyrus also challenges narratives about sex and religion. If Egyptians, whose religion permeated life, created explicit erotica, it shows religion and sexuality need not be antagonistic. The dichotomy between sacred and sexual is modern imposition. Ancient cultures often integrated them, seeing sexual energy as divine force. The figures' positions in the papyrus demonstrate anatomical knowledge and inventive playfulness. The Egyptians who viewed this might have laughed, been aroused, or both. Humour and eroticism can coexist. The man's comical appearance adds levity, preventing the scenes from being merely pornographic. There is joy in the images, not degradation. The Turin erotic papyrus survives as testimony to universal human desires. Across millennia, cultures, religions, people seek pleasure, connection, humour. The Egyptians who created this were not alien. They were human like us, enjoying sex, laughing at absurdity, celebrating physical joy. The papyrus bridges time, showing continuity of human experience. The papyrus is forbidden because we, not the Egyptians, forbid it. They created it freely. We restrict it uncomfortably. This reversal illustrates how taboos shift. What was acceptable becomes forbidden. What was forbidden becomes acceptable. Cultural norms are contingent, not eternal. The Turin Erotic Papyrus, explicit and ancient, remains modern scandal, forbidden by contemporary values imposed retroactively on culture that would not recognise our shame. The Kolbrin Manuscript. The Kolbrin Manuscript presents itself as ancient collection containing Egyptian and Celtic texts, preserved through millennia by secret custodians. Its modern publication in the 1990s by the Hope Trust, later the Chaldean Trust, claims the text survived the destruction of Glastonbury Abbey in 1184. The manuscript supposedly contains pre-flood Egyptian knowledge, British Celtic history, prophecies, and spiritual teachings. The text is divided into two parts, the Egyptian books and the Celtic books. The Egyptian section includes the Book of Creation, the Book of Gleanings, the Book of Scrolls, the Book of Sons of Fire, and the Book of Manuscripts. These describe ancient Egypt's wisdom traditions, catastrophic events including a destroyer celestial object causing devastation, creation myths, moral teachings, and spiritual principles. The Celtic books include the Book of Britain, the Book of Origins, the Book of Tribulation, and others. They purportedly record British history from ancient times through Roman occupation and Saxon invasions. They describe Druids, their teachings, rituals, and prophecies. One controversial passage describes Jesus visiting Britain during his lost years, studying with Druids. The most striking claims involve celestial catastrophes. The manuscript describes a planet or comet called the Destroyer passing near Earth, causing pole shifts, floods, earthquakes, and civilizational collapses. These descriptions parallel modern catastrophist theories about cometary impacts or near passes causing extinction events. The text presents these as historical records, warnings from ancestors who survived prior cataclysms. The manuscript's language mimics archaic English, resembling King James Bible style. This immediately raises suspicion. If genuinely ancient, it should be in Egyptian hieroglyphs or ancient Celtic languages, with modern English translation acknowledged. Instead, it presents English text as if original, using thee and thou to create impression of antiquity. Scholars universally reject the Kolbrin as authentic. No Egyptian or Celtic texts resemble it. Its content reflects modern ideas about ancient civilizations, catastrophism, spirituality. It incorporates elements from Emanuel Velikovsky's controversial theories about planetary near collisions causing historical catastrophes. The manuscript appears to be 20th century creation, possibly combining genuine historical fragments with extensive invention. The lack of provenance is damning. No manuscript trail exists before the 1980s or 90s. Claims about Glastonbury Abbey's destruction and secret preservation are unverifiable. If monks fled with precious manuscripts in 1184, contemporary records might mention it. None do. The manuscript's sudden appearance after centuries of supposed hiding strains credulity, yet the Kolbrin has attracted followers. Some view it as genuine ancient wisdom suppressed by church authorities who destroyed libraries and persecuted Druids. The manuscript's catastrophism appeals to those believing mainstream science ignores evidence of ancient cataclysms. Its spiritual teachings resonate with New Age seekers wanting alternative to conventional religion. The text contains interesting ideas regardless of authenticity. Its ethical teachings emphasize personal responsibility, spiritual development, compassion. The cosmology, while not scientifically accurate, is imaginative. The catastrophe narratives, though lacking evidence, are compelling stories about human survival against overwhelming natural forces. Some defenders argue the Kolbrin preserves oral traditions later written down, explaining lack of ancient manuscripts. Druids transmitted knowledge orally, prohibiting written records. Perhaps after Christianity's arrival, Some Druids or Christianized Celts recorded oral traditions, creating the manuscript. This hypothesis, while possible, cannot be proven without evidence. The Kolbrin Manuscript is forbidden in the sense that mainstream scholarship rejects it. Academic institutions do not teach it as a historical document. Archaeologists and historians dismiss it. This exclusion from academic discourse makes it forbidden knowledge to believers who see scholars as gatekeepers suppressing truth. The manuscript exemplifies a genre, pseudo-historical texts claiming ancient origin, revealing suppressed knowledge. These texts appeal to distrust of authorities, desire for hidden wisdom, belief that mainstream narratives are incomplete or false. They provide alternative histories, flattering to readers who see themselves as enlightened minorities, recognizing truths the masses miss. The danger of texts like the Kolbrin is spreading misinformation. Readers accepting it as history may develop false understanding of ancient civilizations, catastrophes, and human prehistory. Yet the desire driving belief in such texts is understandable. Wanting connection to deep past, seeking wisdom from ancestors, hoping history contains lessons for present crises. The Kolbrin Manuscript is modern myth, masquerading as ancient text. It is forbidden by scholarship standards of evidence, yet embraced by communities valuing different epistemologies. It exists in borderland between history and fiction, accepted by some, rejected by others, demonstrating ongoing human need to imagine ancient wisdom and warnings from the past. The Bardo Thodol. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, known in Tibetan as the Bardo Thodol, Liberation Through Hearing in the Intermediate State, is a funerary text describing experiences the consciousness undergoes after death. It was written in the 8th century CE by Padmasambhava, the Indian mystic who introduced Buddhism to Tibet, though it was hidden and rediscovered in the 14th century by Karma Lingpa. The text is read aloud to dying and deceased individuals, guiding them through the Bardo, the intermediate state between death and rebirth. Tibetan Buddhism teaches that consciousness does not immediately reincarnate, but spends up to 49 days in transitional realm experiencing visions, encountering deities, facing judgment. The Bardo Thodol provides instructions for navigating this liminal existence, aiming for liberation or at least favourable rebirth. The Bardo has 3 main phases. The Chikai Bardo begins at moment of death. Consciousness separates from body, experiences clear light of ultimate reality. If one recognizes this light as one's own true nature, liberation occurs, escaping rebirth cycle. Most consciousness, confused and unprepared, fail to recognize the light and proceed to next phase. The Chonyid Bardo involves encountering peaceful and wrathful deities. These are not external beings, but projections of one's own mind, karmic imprints manifesting as visions. Peaceful deities appear first: Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, radiant beings. If consciousness recognizes them as aspects of itself, liberation is possible. Failing this, wrathful deities appear, terrifying figures, blood-drinking demons, monstrous forms. These too are mind's projections, but their horrifying appearance causes consciousness to flee in terror. The Sidpa Bardo is the final phase, where consciousness, having failed liberation, seeks rebirth. It experiences attraction and aversion to various realms: heavenly, human, animal, hungry ghost, hell. Consciousness is drawn toward future parents, copulating, entering the womb to begin new life. The text instructs how to choose favourable rebirth or resist rebirth altogether, maintaining awareness to achieve liberation even in this last opportunity. The text's instructions are precise. When wrathful deities appear, consciousness should recognize them as illusions, fearlessly embracing them to achieve liberation. When visions of future realms appear, consciousness should avoid inferior births, choosing human realm if rebirth is inevitable. Throughout, the text emphasizes awareness, recognizing visions as mind's creations, not external realities, is key to liberation. the Bardo Thodol presupposes Buddhist philosophy, karma, rebirth, the mind's creative power, liberation, as escape from suffering. For believers, the text is practical manual, not mythology. Practitioners study it during life, preparing for death. Tibetan monks memorize passages, ensuring they can recall instructions in Bardo's confusion. Western reception of the Bardo Thodol began with Walter Evans Wentz's 1927 translation, The Tibetan Book of the Dead. This introduced Tibetan Buddhism to Western audiences, though Evans Wentz's theosophical interpretations coloured the translation. Later, more accurate translations appeared, but the text's exotic reputation was established. Psychedelic researchers in the 1960s adopted the Bardo Thodol as guide for LSD experiences. Timothy Leary, Ralph Metzner, and Richard Alpert created the psychedelic experience, adapting the text structure to drug-induced ego death. They saw parallels between Bardo visions and psychedelic visuals, interpreting both as consciousness encountering deep psychic structures. Carl Jung wrote a psychological commentary on the Bardo Thodol, interpreting deities as archetypal figures from collective unconscious. For Jung, the text described universal psychological processes activated at death, whether visions were objective spiritual realities or subjective mental phenomena. Jung found the text valuable for understanding psyche's depths. Tibetan masters often restrict full teachings on the Bardo Thodol to initiated students. The text is not secret, but its deeper meanings require context. Studying it without understanding Buddhist philosophy and meditation practice can lead to misunderstanding. The text is written in symbolic language, assuming readers have received oral teachings explaining symbols. Some passages remain restricted even among Tibetans. Certain tantric practices described briefly in the text are taught only through direct master-student transmission. Written descriptions are incomplete, requiring oral instruction and empowerment. This ensures practices are not misused, protecting both practitioner and teachings. The Bardo Thodol's cosmology is complex. The 6 realms of rebirth, deities populate in Bardo visions, karmic mechanics driving rebirth, all require study to comprehend. Westerners reading the text often encounter unfamiliar concepts, names, imagery. Without guidance, the text can seem impenetrable or fantastical. Modern neuroscience offers alternative interpretations. Near-death experiences, where people report tunnels, lights, deceased relatives, might relate to brain states during dying. Oxygen deprivation, neurochemical releases, brain activity patterns could generate visions the Bardo Thodol describes. This does not invalidate the text's spiritual value, but offers materialist explanation. Whether the Bardo is ontological reality or psychological process, the Bardo Thodol addresses fundamental human concerns: fear of death, desire for control over one's fate, hope that consciousness persists. It provides a detailed map of death's landscape, offering comfort that the journey is knowable, navigable, with proper preparation. The text emphasizes compassion and wisdom. Preparing for death involves cultivating these qualities throughout life. Meditation, ethical behavior, reducing attachments, all ease the death process. The Bardo Thodol is not merely funerary text, but life guide, teaching how to live so death is liberating rather than terrifying. The Bardo Thodol is forbidden in the sense that full understanding requires initiation and practice within Tibetan Buddhist tradition. Outsiders can read it, but deeper meanings remain concealed without context. It is a text whose surface is accessible, but whose depths require dedication, study, and spiritual development to fathom. It promises liberation, but demands preparation. It reveals death's secrets, but insists the living must transform to benefit from this knowledge. The Zohar. The Zohar, the Book of Radiance, is the central text of Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah. Written in medieval Aramaic, it is traditionally attributed to Shimon bar Yochai, a 2nd century rabbi, though scholars believe it was composed by Moses de Leon in 13th century Spain. The Zohar presents mystical interpretations of Torah, revealing hidden meanings beneath Scripture's surface. The text is complex, sprawling across multiple volumes. It takes the form of commentary on Torah portions, with Rabbi Shimon and his companions discussing verses, revealing esoteric teachings. The discussions range widely: cosmology, divine names, angelology, demonology, the soul's nature, reincarnation, sexual symbolism, messianic prophecy. Central to the Zohar is the doctrine of Sephirot, 10 emanations through which the infinite Ein Sof, the unknowable God, manifests. These Sephirot form a structure called the Tree of Life: Keter, crown; Chokmah, wisdom; Bina, understanding; Chesed, mercy; Gevurah, judgment; Tiferet, beauty; Netzach, victory; Hod, splendor; Yesod, foundation; Malkut, kingdom. Each Sephirah represents divine attribute, aspect of God's self-revelation. The Sephirot interrelate dynamically. Mercy and judgment must balance. Male and female principles, represented by Teferet and Malkut, must unite. Disruptions cause divine disharmony, affecting creation. Human actions influence Sephirot. Righteous deeds promote harmony. Sins create separation. The Zohar teaches that humans, through proper behavior and mystical intention, participate in divine processes. The text uses elaborate sexual symbolism. Divine union is described as marriage, coitus between male and female aspects of God. The Sabbath is when the Shekinah, God's feminine presence, unites with the Holy One. This union generates blessings flowing to creation. Kabbalists performing mitzvot, commandments, intend to promote this divine unity. The Zohar discusses metempsychosis, reincarnation. Souls transmigrate through multiple bodies, refining themselves over lifetimes. Each life offers opportunities to correct past failings, fulfill uncompleted commandments. The process continues until the soul achieves perfection, no longer requiring physical incarnation. The text reveals secret meanings of biblical stories. Adam's sin involved disrupting divine unity. The patriarchs' lives allegorically represent Sephirot. The Exodus from Egypt symbolizes spiritual liberation from material bondage. Every Torah verse contains infinite meanings accessible through mystical interpretation. The Zohar was historically restricted. Only men over 40, married, well-versed in Torah and Talmud, were considered ready for Kabbalistic study. The teachings were thought dangerous for unprepared minds. Misunderstanding could lead to heresy, madness, or spiritual harm. Kabbalah was elite discipline, transmitted carefully from master to disciple. This restriction partly explains Kabbalah's aura of forbidden knowledge. The Zohar contains teachings mainstream Judaism found uncomfortable. Reincarnation was not universally accepted. The sexual imagery, even if allegorical, seemed scandalous. The claim that humans affect God, that God contains male and female aspects, challenged conventional theology. Some rabbis opposed Kabbalah as distortion of Judaism. Rationalists like Maimonides emphasized philosophy and law, viewing mysticism skeptically. Kabbalists responded that their teachings were ancient, transmitted secretly from Moses through generations. The Zohar's attribution to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai gave it authority, though critical scholars doubt this authorship. The Zohar's influence expanded in the 16th century when Isaac Luria developed Lurianic Kabbalah, elaborating Zoharic teachings. Lurianic cosmology described cosmic catastrophe, shattered vessels, sparks of divinity trapped in matter, humanity's role in cosmic repair. This system became influential, shaping Hasidic Judaism and broader Jewish thought. Christian Kabbalists in the Renaissance studied the Zohar, seeing in it confirmation of Christian doctrines. They equated the Sephirot with angels, or Trinity. Jewish Kabbalists rejected these interpretations, but Christian interest spread Kabbalistic ideas beyond Judaism. Modern translations make the Zohar accessible to general readers. Previously available only in Aramaic or Hebrew, now English, Spanish, and other translations exist. This democratization allows anyone to study the text, though traditional warnings about spiritual preparedness remain. The Zohar's language is deliberately opaque. Concepts are described metaphorically, symbols pile upon symbols. Reading it without commentary is difficult even for Hebrew speakers. The text assumes knowledge of Torah, Talmud, earlier Kabbalistic works. It is not introductory material, but advanced teaching. Some passages remain restricted in practice. Certain divine names, meditation practices, theurgical rituals are taught only orally by qualified masters. Publishing them would be irresponsible, according to traditional view. Power accessed through these practices requires ethical grounding and expert guidance. The Zohar describes creation as emanation from divine nothingness. Ein Sof, the infinite, beyond comprehension, contracts to allow creation's existence. This withdrawal, Tzimtzum, makes space for finite reality. Creation is not ex nihilo from nothing, but from divine being willing itself into apparent absence. Human purpose, according to the Zohar, is tikkun, repair. Cosmic catastrophes scattered divine sparks throughout material creation. Humans, through righteous actions, elevate these sparks, returning them to divine source. This process redeems creation, hastens messianic age, restores divine unity. The Zohar is a book of longing. It yearns for divine intimacy, for lost wholeness, for unity transcending apparent fragmentation. Its symbolism is rapturous, erotic, ecstatic. It portrays cosmic drama, where humans are not spectators, but participants, our choices reverberating through divine realms. The text is forbidden because it reveals God's inner life, describes divine anatomy, claims humans affect deity. These ideas scandalized those who insisted God is utterly transcendent, unchanging, unaffected by creation. The Zohar breaches that distance, proposing intimacy between human and divine that orthodoxy found presumptuous. Yet for mystics, the Zohar opens gates to sacred encounter. It provides language for experiences beyond words, maps for journeys into mystery. It insists that Torah contains infinite depth, that reality is symbolic, that existence itself is saturated with divine presence awaiting recognition. The Zohar is forbidden because it offers dangerous proximity to the sacred, demanding transformation from those who approach it seriously. It is a text of fire that illuminates and burns, revealing secrets while insisting the deepest secret is that everything ultimately is God. The Voynich Manuscript. In the Beinecke Rare Book Library at Yale University, a small book rests in climate-controlled storage. It contains approximately 240 pages of vellum covered with text in an unknown script accompanied by strange illustrations. This is the Voynich Manuscript, named after Wilfrid Voynich, the book dealer who purchased it in 1912. It is the most mysterious book in the world, a text that has defeated every attempt at decipherment for over a century. The manuscript dates to the early 15th century, based on radiocarbon testing of the vellum. The pages show wear consistent with age. The ink has characteristics matching medieval recipes, yet everything about its content defies explanation. The text flows in neat lines, clearly organized into paragraphs and sections. The handwriting is consistent, suggesting a single scribe. The language follows patterns suggesting real linguistic structure. Word frequency, distributions, apparent grammar, consistent spelling. It looks like language, but it is a language no one can read. The illustrations are equally perplexing. The manuscript divides into apparent sections based on imagery. The botanical section shows plants, roots, leaves, flowers. Over 100 plants are depicted, drawn with care and detail. Yet none match known species. Botanists examining the drawings cannot identify a single plant definitively. Some resemble real plants, but with impossible features. wrong number of roots, leaves attached incorrectly, flowers that could not exist. Are these imaginary plants? Symbolic representations? Species now extinct? Plants from somewhere unknown? No answer. Satisfies. The astronomical section contains circular diagrams with stars, moons, suns. Zodiac-like symbols appear, some recognizable, others invented. Naked female figures populate these pages, small human forms drawn repetitively within the celestial wheels. The purpose is unclear. Are these astrological charts, calendars, cosmological diagrams? The symbols resist interpretation. The biological section shows more naked women, this time bathing in pools connected by pipes and channels. Green liquid flows through elaborate plumbing systems. The women seem healthy, not suffering. The scene is not medical, but perhaps hydrological or alchemical. Some researchers suggest the drawings represent a spa or bathhouse. Others propose symbolic representation of bodily humours, fertility, or spiritual purification. The true meaning remains elusive. The pharmaceutical section depicts plants again, now with jars and containers beside them, suggesting medicinal preparation. Text accompanies these illustrations, perhaps recipes or instructions. If only the text could be read, this section might explain the mysterious plants. But the script remains impenetrable. The manuscript's history before 1912 is partially traced. It was owned by Georg Baresch, a Prague alchemist in the 17th century who was baffled by it and sent copies to scholars seeking help with translation. Athanasius Kircher, the Jesuit polymath, received the manuscript and added it to his collection. From there, it passed to the Collegio Romano, where it remained until Voynich purchased it from the Jesuit archives. A letter found with the manuscript, possibly a forgery, claimed it once belonged to Emperor Rudolf II of Bohemia, who believed it was written by Roger Bacon, the 13th century English philosopher and scientist. Rudolf supposedly paid 600 gold ducats for it, an enormous sum, indicating he valued it highly. However, no evidence confirms Bacon's authorship. The manuscript's vellum and composition post-date Bacon by over a century. Decipherment attempts have employed every available method. Linguists analyze the text statistically, comparing letter frequencies and patterns to known languages. The text does not match any known language family. Some propose it is an artificial language, created by the author. Others suggest elaborate cipher, encoding a known language through substitution or transposition. Cryptographers, including codebreakers from both world wars, examined the manuscript. None succeeded. Computer analysis in recent decades applied artificial intelligence and machine learning. These programs detected patterns but cannot translate. One study claimed the underlying language might be Hebrew, encoded through algorithm. The proposed decipherment produced gibberish when tested rigorously. Other computational approaches suggested Latin, Arabic, or invented language. None withstood scrutiny. Some researchers propose the manuscript is hoax, meaningless text generated to appear linguistic. Perhaps it was created to defraud Rudolf II or other collectors, taking advantage of the early modern fascination with secret knowledge and ancient wisdom. The hoax theory explains why decipherment fails. There is no meaning to decode, yet the text's statistical properties show patterns inconsistent with random generation. If it is hoax, the forger employed sophisticated method to create linguistic verisimilitude. One provocative theory suggests the text is glossolalia, speaking in tongues transcribed. A religious mystic experiencing ecstatic states might produce streams of nonsense that sound like language. If such utterances were written down, they would appear linguistic without actually encoding information. This would explain the manuscript's linguistic patterns without requiring it to be meaningful. The botanical drawings have inspired wildest speculation. Some claim the plants are from the New World, drawn before Columbus, suggesting the manuscript's creator somehow knew of American flora. This theory requires accepting pre-Columbian transatlantic contact, for which evidence is minimal. Others propose the plants are psychoactive, drawn by someone experiencing altered consciousness induced by entheogens. The distorted, impossible features result from hallucination rather than observation. The naked women in the astronomical and biological sections generate controversy. Medieval manuscripts rarely depicted nudity so casually. The Voynich women are not Eve or Mary Magdalene, or allegorical figures typically shown nude in medieval art. They are anonymous, repeated, numerous. Some researchers suggest Catha or other heretical connections, proposing the manuscript contains suppressed religious teachings. Others see alchemical symbolism, the women representing materials or processes in the great work. Carbon dating places the vellum between 1404 and 1438 CE. This narrow window situates the manuscript in the early Italian Renaissance, a period of intense intellectual activity, exploration of ancient texts, and fascination with Hermeticism, alchemy, and coded knowledge. The manuscript fits this cultural context, yet remains anomalous. The Voynich manuscript is forbidden not through suppression, but through its absolute resistance to understanding. It refuses to yield meaning. It sits in libraries, photographed, digitized, available to anyone online, yet it remains closed. Accessibility does not equal comprehension. The text is barrier we cannot cross. Every few years, someone announces they have cracked the code. Media reports the breakthrough, then scholars examine the proposed solution and find it fails. The pattern repeats. The manuscript has become Rorschach test, reflecting each decoder's assumptions and desires. People see in it what they hope to find: secret medieval science, alien communication, divine revelation, elaborate joke. Perhaps the manuscript's greatest mystery is not what it says, but why it was created. Someone invested significant time, resources, and skill producing this object. Vellum was expensive, the illustrations required artistic ability. The text, even if meaningless, required patience to execute consistently across 200 pages. What motivated this effort? If it is cipher, who was meant to read it? If it is hoax, who was meant to be fooled? If it is genuine attempt to record something, why use unknown script? The manuscript embodies humanity's encounter with incomprehensibility. We confront a human artifact we cannot understand, created by someone like us, yet utterly alien in execution. It humbles our intelligence, mocks our methods, resists our technologies. In an age where computers decode genomes and translate ancient languages, the Voynich manuscript remains impervious. The book is forbidden because it will not speak. It contains secrets, perhaps, or contains nothing. We cannot know. It is cipher that may have no key, language that may have no grammar, knowledge that may not exist. The Voynich manuscript is perfect mystery, complete in its obscurity, asking questions we cannot answer, offering knowledge we cannot grasp, remaining forever just beyond the reach of understanding. The Codex Gigas, the largest surviving medieval manuscript, weighs approximately 75 kilograms. It measures 92 centimeters tall, 50 centimeters wide, and 22 centimeters thick when closed. 310 parchment pages remain from an original 320, each made from calf or donkey skin. This is the Codex Gigas, the giant book, created in the early 13th century in the Benedictine monastery of Podlagis in Bohemia. It is also called the Devil's Bible because of a full-page illustration of Satan. The manuscript contains the complete Vulgate Bible, Josephus's Antiquities of the Jews, medical texts by Hippocrates and others, a history of Bohemia, various chronicles, formulas for magic and exorcism, and a calendar listing saints' days and local obituaries. It is an encyclopedia of medieval knowledge, compiled in a single massive volume. What makes it extraordinary beyond size is the legend of its creation and the demonic portrait within. According to legend recorded centuries after the manuscript's creation, a monk violated his monastic vows and was sentenced to being walled up alive. He begged for mercy, promising to create a book glorifying the monastery, containing all human knowledge, completed in a single night. The abbot, amused or curious, agreed. As midnight approached and the monk realized the task was impossible, he prayed not to God, but to Satan. the devil appeared and offered assistance in exchange for the monk's soul. Desperate, the monk agreed. Satan completed the manuscript in the remaining hours before dawn. In gratitude or terror, the monk added Satan's portrait to the book. This legend is fiction, but it shaped the manuscript's reputation. The Devil's Bible was considered cursed, bringing misfortune to owners. Wars, fires, and disasters followed it. When Swedish forces looted Prague during the 30 Years' War in 1648, they seized the Codex Gigas as war booty. It was transported to Stockholm, where it resides today in the National Library of Sweden. During a fire at the Royal Palace in Stockholm in 1697, the Codex was rescued by tossing it out a window, damaging some pages, but saving the manuscript. The devil illustration appears on page 290. It shows a large horned figure with clawed hands and feet, green face with red eyes and mouth, holding a staff. The devil crouches within an architectural frame, suggesting a gateway or enclosure. Opposite this page, now missing but described in early accounts, was an illustration of the heavenly city, the New Jerusalem. Heaven and hell faced each other across the book's opening, visual representation of cosmic duality. The devil image is unusual in medieval art. Most medieval depictions show Satan as smaller, less prominent, or more grotesque and monstrous. The Codex Gigas devil is large, dominating the page, almost dignified despite its demonic features. Some historians suggest the image represents not Satan himself, but a lesser demon, perhaps a warning against evil, rather than invocation of it. Others argue the image's prominence indicates the book's use in exorcism rituals, invoking demonic presence to command and bind it. Scientific analysis reveals that the manuscript was created by a single scribe. The handwriting is consistent throughout, showing no variation in style despite the text's length. Estimates suggest writing the text alone would require approximately 5 years of continuous work, not including the illuminations, illustrations, and decorative capitals. The monk who created it demonstrated extraordinary discipline, consistency, and stamina. The legend of overnight completion is impossible, but it reflects astonishment at the manuscript's uniformity. Medieval scribes typically worked intermittently, producing manuscripts over months or years. Handwriting usually shows variation across such spans. The Codex Gigas' remarkable consistency suggests obsessive dedication, a monk working daily without interruption. Such single-minded focus might have seemed supernatural to later observers, spawning legends of diabolical assistance. The manuscript's contents are conventionally religious and scholarly. The Bible occupies most of the volume. Josephus's history provides context for biblical events. The medical texts offer practical knowledge. The magic formulas and exorcism rites were standard tools for medieval clergy combating perceived demonic activity. Nothing in the content is heretical or forbidden by medieval standards. The manuscript was created within Orthodox Christianity, intended for monastic use, yet possession of comprehensive exorcism rites made the book valuable and potentially dangerous. Exorcism required knowledge of demonic names, hierarchies, and binding formulas. Such knowledge, if misused or accessed by unqualified individuals, could lead to invoking rather than banishing demons. The manuscript's magical sections were meant for trained clergy, not lay people. This restricted access contributed to its forbidden aura. The Codex Gigas left Bohemia during turbulent times. The Hussite wars of the 15th century devastated monasteries. The monastery of Podlagis was destroyed, its community scattered. The manuscript survived, passing through various owners before reaching Rudolf II's court in Prague. Rudolf, obsessed with occult knowledge, collected such texts avidly. The codex fit perfectly into his library of esoterica. When Swedish forces invaded Prague, General Hans Christoph von Königsmark specifically targeted Rudolf's collection. The codex, along with other treasures, was seized and sent to Queen Christina of Sweden. Christina, intellectual and unconventional ruler, appreciated the manuscript's uniqueness. After her abdication and conversion to Catholicism, she moved to Rome, but the codex remained in Sweden. The manuscript's association with catastrophe reinforced its cursed reputation. The 30 Years' War brought devastation across Europe. The Stockholm Palace fire threatened to destroy it. World wars made its preservation uncertain, yet the Codex survived as if protected by the same dark forces supposedly involved in its creation. Modern examination reveals details invisible to naked eye. Ultraviolet light exposes erased text beneath some pages, showing the scribe corrected mistakes or revised passages. Chemical analysis of inks shows variations suggesting different batches prepared at different times, supporting the years-long creation timeline. The parchment comes from approximately 160 animals, representing significant material cost. The missing pages between the Old and New Testaments once contained monastic rules. Why these pages were removed is unknown. Some speculate they contained information later deemed sensitive or compromising. Others suggest simple damage or theft by someone wanting specific content. The removal remains unexplained. The Codex Gigas represents medieval knowledge's totality: scripture, history, medicine, magic. It embodied the belief that all knowledge ultimately cohered, that medicine, theology, and magic were aspects of unified understanding of God's creation. The modern division between science, religion, and occultism did not exist. The Codex reflects this integrated worldview. The devil's portrait disturbs because it is so prominent, so carefully executed. The artist devoted as much care to Satan as to any other illustration. This equality of treatment suggests complex relationship with evil in medieval consciousness. Evil was real, powerful, worthy of serious attention. Depicting the devil was not worship, but acknowledgement of cosmic adversary. Understanding evil was necessary to combat it. The Codex Gigas is forbidden in modern consciousness because of its legendary association with Satan. Though its content is orthodox, the legend of diabolic origin clings to it. Museums displaying it note the Devil's Bible nickname, attracting visitors with promises of darkness. The manuscript becomes object of fascination, not for what it is, but for what it supposedly represents. Knowledge gained through forbidden pact, beauty achieved through infernal assistance, power obtained by selling one's soul. The manuscript endures as artifact of medieval worldview, time when the supernatural was immediate and real. Angels and demons influenced events. Saints intervened miraculously. Books could be cursed or blessed. The Codex Gigas, with its diabolical legend and demonic portrait, embodies that world. It is bridge to past, where the boundaries between sacred and profane, divine and demonic, knowledge and damnation were blurred. The Devil's Bible remains massive and mysterious, carrying weight of centuries and the shadow of its dark legend. The Book of Thoth. In ancient Egyptian tradition, Thoth was the god of wisdom, writing, magic, and the moon. Depicted as ibis-headed or as baboon, Thoth served as scribe of the gods, recording their judgments, weighing hearts of the dead alongside Mahat. The Egyptians attributed to Thoth the invention of hieroglyphs, the creation of religious texts, and the authorship of books containing ultimate knowledge. Among these, the most powerful was the Book of Thoth. The book supposedly contained spells granting power over earth, sky, and underworld. Reading the first spell allowed one to understand the speech of animals and birds. The second spell enabled seeing the sun, moon, and gods in their true forms. Other spells granted power to enchant the earth and sky, to raise the dead, to understand the language of all creatures. Possessing the book meant possessing divine knowledge, the secrets of existence itself. Egyptian literature mentions the Book of Thoth in various contexts, always as dangerous object. The Westcar Papyrus, dating to the Middle Kingdom, tells of Prince Hajadef, who learned of ancient wonders, possibly including Thoth's book. The Demotic tales of Setna Kamwas from the Ptolemaic period describe Prince Setna's search for the book. In the Setna story, Prince Setna hears of the Book of Thoth. hidden in a tomb at Koptos. The book was sealed in a series of boxes, a golden box inside a silver box, inside a bronze box, inside an iron box, inside an ebony and ivory box, inside a sycamore box. The boxes were placed in a stone sarcophagus at the bottom of the Nile. The book was guarded by serpents and scorpions, and the location was hidden through magic. Setne travels to Koptos, finds the tomb, and confronts Naneferkaptah, the deceased prince who stole the book from Thoth. Naneferkaptah warned Setne that the book brought only suffering. Thoth punished Naneferkaptah for stealing it. His wife and son drowned. He died in grief, and though buried with the book, his spirit cannot rest. Setne ignores the warning, defeats Naneferkaptah in a magical game, and seizes the book. After taking the book, Setne experiences supernatural visions and misfortunes. He becomes obsessed with a beautiful woman, Tabubu, who manipulates him into killing his children and performing degrading acts. Only then does Setne realize these events are illusions, punishment for stealing the book. He returns it to the tomb, and Thoth forgives him. The moral is clear: divine knowledge is forbidden to mortals, and those who seek it suffer. Historical evidence suggests no single Book of Thoth existed. Instead, various magical and religious texts were attributed to Thoth. The body of Hermetic literature in Greco-Roman Egypt was sometimes called Books of Thoth, connecting Egyptian Thoth with Greek Hermes. These texts taught magic, astrology, alchemy, and theology, claiming transmission from ancient divine wisdom. The demotic magical papyri, written in Egyptian script during Greek and Roman periods, contains spells invoking Thoth and claiming authority from his teachings. These practical magic handbooks include formulas for divination, love spells, curses, healing, and protection. They represent the type of knowledge attributed to Thoth: control over hidden forces, manipulation of reality through words and ritual. In modern occultism, the Book of Thoth has been reinvented multiple times. Aleister Crowley titled his commentary on the tarot The Book of Thoth, claiming the tarot preserved Egyptian esoteric wisdom encoded in images. Crowley's book explains his Thoth tarot deck, designed with artist Lady Frida Harris, interpreting each card through Hermetic philosophy, Kabbalah, and his own thelemic system. Earlier, Eliphas Lévy, the French occultist, proposed that the tarot itself was the Book of Thoth, surviving as pictorial representation of ancient mysteries. This theory lacks historical basis. Tarot originated in 15th century Italy as playing cards, but it established influential idea that secret knowledge from antiquity survived, disguised in popular culture. The search for the Book of Thoth reflects perennial human desire for ultimate knowledge. If such a book existed, containing secrets of creation, power over life and death, understanding of all mysteries, surely it would be hidden, protected, accessible only to worthy seekers. The narrative of the Forbidden Book, bringing power and doom, appears across cultures. The Necronomicon in fiction, grimoires in medieval Europe, secret teachings in every mystical tradition. Egyptian priests did protect temple libraries, restricting access to sacred texts. The Book of the Dead and other funerary and ritual texts were copied for those who could afford them, but temple archives contained additional material unavailable to outsiders. This historical restriction feeds legends of secret Egyptian knowledge too powerful for public revelation. The concept of the Book of Thoth embodies the tension between knowledge and wisdom. The book offers knowledge, spells, formulas, understanding of cosmic mechanisms. But the stories warn that knowledge without wisdom brings destruction. Prince Naneferkaptah gained the book but lost his family. Setne took it but suffered illusions and shame. Divine knowledge requires divine nature to wield safely. Mortals obtaining it transgress boundaries, inviting catastrophe. Thoth himself represents the power and danger of writing and knowledge. In Egyptian thought, writing was magical. Hieroglyphs were not merely symbols but living forces. Speaking or writing a name gave power over the entity named. Texts could activate realities, summon gods, curse, or bless. The Book of Thoth, as ultimate text, contained ultimate power and ultimate danger. The book's legendary guardians, serpents, scorpions, magical defences, symbolize knowledge's self-protective nature. True understanding cannot be simply taken. It requires preparation, worthiness, transformation of the seeker. Those who approach unprepared are repelled or destroyed. This theme appears in initiatory traditions worldwide. Secret teachings are given only to those proven ready. The Book of Thoth is forbidden because it represents knowledge mortals should not possess. It offers power, reserved for gods. Its spells grant abilities that violate natural order. Understanding animal speech means transcending human limitations. Seeing gods means penetrating divine mystery. Commanding earth and sky means usurping divine authority. Such knowledge dissolves the boundary between human and divine, mortal and immortal, natural and supernatural. Whether the Book of Thoth ever physically existed is less important than its symbolic function. It represents the dream of complete knowledge, the fantasy that somewhere, hidden, lies the answer to all questions, the solution to all problems, the key to all locks. This dream motivates seekers, mystics, magicians, scientists. It drives exploration of unknown territories, both external and internal. The Book of Thoth endures in imagination because it promises what we most desire: understanding, not partial, limited, human understanding, but total divine understanding. It offers escape from confusion, ignorance, limitation. Yet the Egyptian tales warn, such knowledge is not gift, but burden, not liberation, but curse. The book is forbidden because obtaining it costs more than it gives, destroying seekers even as it enlightens them. Thoth's book remains hidden, not in tomb or temple, but beyond the reach of mortal hands, guarded by the impossibility of human nature transcending its own boundaries. The Exorcism Manual of Ashurbanipal. Ashurbanipal, king of the Assyrian Empire from 669 to approximately 631 BCE, was a warrior, a conqueror, and a scholar. He assembled one of the ancient world's greatest libraries at his palace in Nineveh, collecting thousands of cuneiform tablets containing literature, science, religion, and magic from across Mesopotamia. Among these tablets were extensive collections of exorcism rituals, incantations against demons, and magical formulas for protecting against evil. These texts were not unified manual, but collections gathered from various sources. Assyrian and Babylonian cultures believed the world was populated by malevolent spirits, demons causing disease, ghosts of the restless dead, evil winds bringing plague, witches cursing victims. Exorcism was essential religious technology, performed by specialized priests called Ashipu, exorcist, and Azipu, healers. The tablets describe demons in detail. Pazuzu, king of wind demons, brought disease and famine, but could also be invoked to protect against other demons. Lamashtu, female demon, attacked pregnant women and infants, stealing babies from wombs or cribs. The Lilu, night demons, cause nocturnal illness and nightmares. The texts provide identification, attributes, and methods for expelling each type. Exorcism rituals were complex, involving incantations, symbolic actions, and material offerings. A typical ritual began with identifying the demon or evil causing affliction. Divination through examining animal livers or interpreting dreams determined the source. Once identified, the exorcist recited formulas commanding the demon to leave, invoking higher gods to compel obedience. The Kaks'ai, incantations invoke major deities. Ea, god of wisdom and water. Marduk, king of gods. Shamash, sun god. These deities possess power over demons, and their names command authority. By the command of Ea, Marduk, and Shamash, depart from this body. Go to the desert, to the mountain, to the abyss. Never return. The formulas are imperative, not pleading. God's authority is absolute. Rituals included symbolic acts. Figurines of demons were created, then destroyed or buried, symbolically destroying the demon's power. Offerings of food or drink placated spirits. Incense and fumigation purified spaces. Washing with water, blessed by incantations, cleansed victims. Amulets inscribed with protective spells guarded against future attacks. Some tablets contain anti-witchcraft rituals. Witches, practitioners of malevolent magic, could curse enemies through spells, poisoned food, or sympathetic magic using hair, fingernails, or clothing. Counter-rituals returned curses to senders, breaking magical bindings, protecting victims. These rituals assumed witchcraft was real and effective, requiring equally potent countermeasures. One series of tablets, Maklu, burning, describes elaborate ritual performed at night to destroy witchcraft. The ritual lasted through darkness, culminating at dawn. Effigies of witches were created and burned while reciting incantations. The fire symbolically consumed the witches' power, neutralizing their magic. The ritual's text includes dozens of incantations addressing different aspects of witchcraft. Another series, Sherpu, burning as well, focused on removing ritual impurity rather than demonic possession. The texts list actions causing impurity, breaking taboos, failing ritual obligations, offending gods inadvertently. Purification rituals restored individuals to proper spiritual state, allowing them to participate in religious community. Failure to purify risked divine punishment. The diagnostic texts are equally detailed. Series like Sakiku describe symptoms and their supernatural causes. Fever indicated possession by a specific demon. Skin diseases resulted from divine anger. Mental illness came from ghost attachment. Each symptom indicated underlying spiritual problem requiring specific treatment. Medicine and magic were inseparable. Physical symptoms had metaphysical causes. Ashurbanipal's library preserved this knowledge systematically. Scribes copied old tablets, creating new editions. They organized text thematically, creating what functioned as reference library. Exorcists could consult tablets when encountering unfamiliar symptoms or demons, ensuring proper treatment. The library represented accumulation of centuries of magical and medical knowledge. When Nineveh fell to the Medes and Babylonians in 612 BCE, the palace was destroyed. Fire consumed the buildings, but cuneiform tablets, baked clay, survived fire. The conflagration inadvertently preserved Ashurbanipal's library, hardening tablets that might otherwise have crumbled. Millennia later, archaeologists excavating Nineveh found thousands of fragments, piecing together ancient knowledge. Translation revealed the extent of Mesopotamian demonology and exorcism practice. These were not primitive superstitions, but sophisticated systems, logically consistent within their worldview. If demons existed, which Mesopotamians believed absolutely, then exorcism was rational response. The rituals were empirical in approach. Certain formulas worked against certain demons, proven through repeated application. The texts are forbidden in modern sense because they assume real demons requiring real exorcism. Monotheistic religions absorb some elements. Jewish and Christian exorcism traditions show Mesopotamian influence, but rejected the polytheistic pantheon and multiplicity of demonic beings. Islam similarly condemned pre-Islamic beliefs as jahiliyyah, ignorance, though Islamic exorcism traditions developed independently. Yet the text provided template. The structure of Mesopotamian exorcism, identifying evil, invoking higher authority, commanding departure, sealing protection, appears in later traditions. Catholic exorcism rituals follow similar patterns, diagnosing possession, invoking God and saints, commanding demons in Christ's name, blessing victim. The Mesopotamian logic persists. Some incantations are chilling in their directness. Spirit of the dead, who has no one to provide for him, who has no one to pour libation for him, who roams the streets attacking people, get out. Go to your grave, do not return. Others are compassionate. You who suffer from headache, from the demon who seizes the head, may Ea and Marduk heal you. May the evil be expelled. The texts address human suffering seriously, offering solutions within available conceptual framework. Modern readers may dismiss these as superstition, yet they reveal how ancient peoples made sense of suffering. Illness was not random, but caused by identifiable, actionable forces. Exorcism offered control, hope, agency. Victims were not helpless, rituals provided response. This psychological function should not be underestimated. Belief in remedy helps patients cope with affliction. The exorcism manuals from Ashurbanipal's library are forbidden texts in that they represent displaced worldview. We no longer believe in Pazuzu or Lamashtu, no longer attribute disease to demons. The text became obsolete as germ theory, psychology, and modern medicine replaced magical explanations, yet they remain fascinating historical documents, showing how sophisticated civilizations understood illness and misfortune. They also reveal continuity. Human experiences of suffering, unexplained illness, mental disturbance remain constant. The explanations change. Demons become neurons, curses become stress, but the underlying phenomena persist. The Assyrian exorcists confronted the same suffering modern doctors treat, using different tools but addressing same human needs: relief, explanation, hope. The tablets survive as testimony to Ashurbanipal's scholarly ambition and Mesopotamia's intellectual achievements. They are forbidden knowledge from vanished world, voices speaking across millennia about demons we no longer fear and gods we no longer worship. Yet in their care for suffering humanity, in their systematic approach to understanding affliction, they speak to something timeless: the human need to make sense of pain and find ways to heal. The Papyrus of Ani. In the British Museum, a papyrus scroll stretches approximately 23 meters long when unrolled, created around 1250 BCE during Egypt's 19th dynasty. It contains text and illustrations from the Book of the Dead, prepared for a scribe named Ani and his wife Tutu. The Papyrus of Ani is the most complete and beautifully illustrated surviving example of Egyptian funerary literature, a guide for navigating the afterlife. The scroll begins with hymns to Ra and Osiris, praising the sun god and lord of the underworld. Ani's spirit, his Ba, must traverse the underworld, passing through gates guarded by fierce beings. Each gate requires passwords, secret names known only to the righteous. The papyrus provides these names. I know you, I know your name, let me pass. Knowledge equals power. Knowing names grants access. The central scene is the weighing of the heart. Ani stands before the scales where his heart is weighed against Ma'at's feather, symbol of truth and justice. Anubis, jackal-headed god, operates the scales. Thoth, ibis-headed scribe, records the result. Amit, devourer of the dead, waits nearby. This chimeric creature, part lion, hippopotamus, and crocodile, will consume Ani's heart if it is heavy with sin. If devoured, Ani's existence ends permanently, ultimate death beyond resurrection. Ani must recite the negative confession, declaring his innocence before 42 divine judges. I have not killed, I have not stolen, I have not lied, I have not committed adultery, I have not cheated in the fields, I have not dammed water, I have not extinguished necessary fire. 42 statements, each addressed to a specific judge. The ritual is not merely confession, but demonstration of knowledge, proving Ani knows proper behaviour and divine expectations. If the heart balances with the feather, Ani is declared justified, makheru, true of voice. He proceeds to the field of reeds, paradise where he will live eternally in perfect conditions. He ploughs, harvests, enjoys abundant food and drink, reunites with loved ones. The field of reeds is Egypt, idealized and eternal, where seasons are perfect and work is light. The papyrus includes spells for transformation. Ani can become a lotus, a heron, a divine falcon. These transformations allow him to move freely, escape dangers, access different realms. I am the lotus arising from the field, I am pure. Metamorphosis is power, adaptability, freedom from fixed form. Other, spells protect against specific dangers. One prevents Ani's heart from testifying against him. O my heart, do not stand up as witness against me. Another prevents his head from being cut off in the underworld. Another allows him to breathe air and drink water in the realm of the dead, ensuring his sustenance. The quality of the Papyrus of Ani is exceptional. The vignettes are painted in brilliant colours still visible after over 3,000 years. The figures are detailed, proportionate, aesthetically refined. Ani and Tutu appear repeatedly, dressed in fine linen, adorned with jewellery, perfectly groomed. They are shown as they wish to appear eternally, young, beautiful, prosperous. The text is written in hieratic script, cursive form of hieroglyphs used for religious documents. The scribe who created the papyrus was skilled, producing neat, legible text with few errors. Ani himself was a scribe, so his funerary papyrus reflects his profession's standards. The care invested shows how seriously Egyptians took death preparation. Creating such papyrus was expensive. The papyrus material, pigments, scribes' labour, all cost significantly. Only wealthy individuals afforded high-quality versions. Poorer people made do with shorter, less decorated copies, or shared mass-produced papyri. Ani's wealth and status enabled him to commission personalised, comprehensive version. The Book of the Dead evolved from earlier pyramid texts and coffin texts. Originally exclusive to royalty, funerary spells gradually became available to non-royal elite. By the New Kingdom, anyone with resources could obtain Book of the Dead papyri. This democratization reflected changing beliefs. Afterlife was accessible to all righteous people, not only pharaohs. Yet inequity remained. The dead needed proper burial, mummification, grave goods, and funerary texts to succeed in the afterlife. These required money. The poor, buried simply without texts or goods, faced uncertain afterlife prospects. Egyptian religion promised eternal life, but in practice made it accessible mainly to wealthy. The Papyrus of Ani was acquired by the British Museum in 1888, after being purchased from tomb robbers. Its provenance is uncertain, the exact tomb location is unknown. Like many Egyptian artifacts, it was removed from Egypt during the colonial period when antiquities were freely bought and exported. Today, debates rage about repatriating such objects, returning them to Egypt. The British Museum retains the papyrus, citing preservation and public access, while critics argue it belongs in Egypt. The papyrus has been extensively studied, translated, and published. E. A. Wallace Budge's translation and commentary, though dated and containing errors by modern standards, made the text widely known in English. Later, more accurate translations corrected misunderstandings. Digital imaging now allows detailed study without handling the fragile original. The Papyrus of Ani is not secret or suppressed. It is displayed publicly, reproduced in books, available online, yet it contains forbidden knowledge in another sense, knowledge of how to navigate death. The spells, names, passwords were necessary for successful afterlife journey. Without them, the deceased was lost, unable to pass gates, unable to defend themselves before judges, condemned to oblivion or consumed by Amit. The papyrus assumes death is traversable with proper preparation. This contrasts with many religious traditions where afterlife is determined by faith, grace, or divine caprice beyond human control. Egyptian religion offered different promise: knowledge saves. Learn the spells, know the names, live righteously, and you will succeed. The afterlife is challenge you can prepare for, test you can study for, journey you can map. This attitude empowered wealthy Egyptians, giving them control over their eternal fate. Yet it also created anxiety. What if the papyrus was damaged? What if spells were miscopied? What if you forgot the names? Egyptians placed great faith in written words' magical power, trusting that properly inscribed spells would activate automatically, guiding the deceased even if living memory failed. The Papyrus of Ani stands as beautiful artifact and profound religious document. It shows Egyptian artistry, belief system, concerns about death and immortality. It reveals a culture obsessed with permanence, using writing and ritual to defeat death itself. The papyrus is Ani's hope, his insurance policy against oblivion, his map through darkness into eternal light. It is forbidden knowledge in that it was meant only for Ani, personal guide through personal death. We view it as outsiders, glimpsing someone else's secret instructions for a journey we cannot take with him. The Book of the Dead. The ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead is not a single book, but a collection of spells, prayers, and instructions, designed to guide the deceased through the underworld to the afterlife. The Egyptian title is more accurately translated as Book of Coming Forth by Day, emphasizing resurrection and return to life rather than finality of death. These texts evolved over millennia, beginning with the pyramid texts of the Old Kingdom, transforming into coffin texts in the Middle Kingdom, and finally standardizing into the Book of the Dead during the New Kingdom. The texts were not canonical scripture, but customizable resources. Individuals commissioned scribes to create personalized papyri containing spells relevant to their needs, fears, and resources. Wealthier patrons obtained longer, more illustrated versions. Poorer people made do with abbreviated editions. No two books of the dead are identical, though common spells appear across many versions. Approximately 200 spells exist across various manuscripts. These are numbered in modern scholarship according to sequence in the Papyrus of Ani and other major examples. Each spell addresses specific challenges or needs in the afterlife. Some are protective, guarding against dangers. Others are transformative, allowing shape-shifting. Some provide knowledge necessary to pass gates and answer divine judges. Certain chapters remain particularly significant and appear in most versions. Spell 125, the negative confession and weighing of the heart, is central. Spell 6 provides the Shabti spell, animating servant figurines placed in tombs to perform labour for the deceased in the afterlife. Spell 15 contains hymns to Ra. Spell 110 describes the field of reeds, the blessed afterlife realm. Some spells are darker, addressing fears of torture, mutilation, or being forced to eat feces or drink urine in the underworld. These reflect genuine Egyptian anxieties about potential afterlife sufferings. The spells protect against such degradation, ensuring the deceased maintain dignity and bodily integrity. I will not eat feces. I will not drink urine. I will not walk upside down. Spell 175 is particularly sobering. Thoth speaks to the god Atum about the eventual destruction of the world. Everything created will eventually return to primordial waters. Only Atum and Osiris will remain. This eschatological vision places human afterlife existence within cosmic context. Even paradise is temporary within eternal cycles. The spell for not dying again, spell 44, addresses the fear that death in the afterlife might mean permanent extinction. Egyptians worried that the blessed dead could potentially die a second time. The spell prevents this, ensuring the resurrected remain alive eternally. My death shall not happen. I will not die again. The heart scarab spell, 130, was inscribed on scarabs placed over the mummy's heart. It commands the heart not to testify against the deceased during judgment. This reveals anxiety that one's own heart, witness to all deeds, might betray you. The scarab's weight kept the heart in place physically and magically prevented it from speaking harmful truths. Transformation spells allow the deceased to become various creatures. Spell 77 permits transformation into a divine falcon. Spell 78 into a hawk. Spell 81 into a lotus. Spell 83 into a phoenix. Each form grants specific abilities: flying, hiding, rebirth. These spells express the desire for agency and power in the afterlife, refusing limitation to single human form. The spell for opening the mouth, spell 23, corresponds to the actual opening of the mouth ceremony performed on mummies before burial. The ritual reanimated the corpse's senses, allowing the deceased to eat, drink, see, hear, speak in the afterlife. Without this ritual, the dead would be helpless, unable to interact with offerings or recite necessary spells. Some spells are geographic, describing the underworld's layout. They name gates, rivers, ferrymen, and the beings who guard them. The deceased must know these to navigate successfully. Like a travel guide, the Book of the Dead maps the afterlife, providing practical information for the journey. The texts assume reality can be manipulated through words. Speaking a spell makes it effective. Writing a spell activates it. Images accompanying spells enhance their power. This is not metaphor, but magical technology. Words are forces that shape reality. Knowing the right words grants control over existence. Illustrations in Books of the Dead are not decorative, but functional. The vignettes show spells being performed, outcomes achieved. They are visual spells, complementing textual ones. Seeing oneself triumph over enemies, pass through gates, sit among gods, helps manifest these realities in the afterlife. Representation creates actuality. Different recensions, versions of the Book of the Dead existed. The Sate recension from the late period attempted standardization, arranging spells in fixed order. Earlier Theban recension was more flexible. These recensions reflect evolving religious practices and theological developments across Egyptian history. Certain spells were considered more powerful or essential. These core spells appear even in abbreviated versions. Others were optional, included based on individual preference or specific concerns. A person afraid of scorpions might include anti-scorpion spells. Someone who loves sailing might include spells for navigating the celestial waters. The Book of the Dead was buried with the deceased, placed in the coffin or tomb. In the afterlife, the deceased could read it, recalling spells needed for each situation. Some spells were also inscribed on tomb walls, amulets, coffins, ensuring redundancy. If the papyrus was damaged, other copies remained accessible. Priests sometimes recited spells during funeral ceremonies. Family members might read them during memorial services. The text functioned at multiple levels: preparation for the deceased, comfort for the living, religious performance, maintaining cosmic order. When Egyptology developed in the 19th century, the Book of the Dead fascinated scholars and public. Early translations sensationalized the content, emphasizing mummies and curses. More careful scholarship revealed the text's religious depth and cultural sophistication. The Book of the Dead became key to understanding Egyptian religion. Yet the texts remain alien to modern sensibilities. The multiplicity of gods, the emphasis on ritual knowledge, the assumption that spells work magically, all challenge contemporary worldviews. Even believers in afterlife typically do not imagine it requiring passwords and transformations. The Book of the Dead's literalism, that you actually need specific words to pass gates guarded by actual beings, seems fantastical. But for Egyptians, this was reality. Death was real, the underworld was real, the gods were real. The spells were necessary tools for survival in dangerous spiritual landscape. Dismissing them as superstition misses their function. They provided structure, meaning, and hope to people facing mortality. They transformed death from terrifying unknown into navigable journey. The Book of the Dead is forbidden in that it was meant for the dead alone. The living were not supposed to need it. Reading another's Book of the Dead is like reading someone else's instructions for a journey they must take alone. We cannot accompany them. We can only watch them depart with their papyrus, trusting the spells will guide them through darkness into the field of reeds where we hope, eventually, to follow. The Instruction of Amenemope. Among ancient Egyptian wisdom literature, the Instruction of Amenemope stands as one of the finest examples. Dating to the 20th dynasty, or later, around 1100 BCE, It contains 30 chapters of moral and practical teachings. Amenemope, whose title was Overseer of Fields, addresses his son, offering guidance for righteous living, professional success, and divine favour. The text belongs to the genre called Sabate, instruction, common in Egyptian literature. Earlier examples include the Instructions of Ptahhotep and the Instructions of Khamenei. These texts convey traditional wisdom from experienced officials to younger generations, teaching virtues necessary for successful careers and good lives. Amenemope's teachings emphasize self-control, humility, honesty, and piety. Do not speak falsely. Truth is like a strong fortress. Lies crumble. The text warns against greed, anger, boasting. It counsels patience, respect for superiors, compassion for the poor. These are universal virtues, but Amenemope articulates them with particular Egyptian flavour. The instruction advises on professional conduct for scribes and officials. Do not move boundary markers. Do not cheat in measuring grain. Do not accept bribes. These practical warnings address temptations facing administrators. Corruption was as present in ancient Egypt as anywhere, and Amenemope's warnings suggest it needed combating. The text famously distinguishes between the silent man and the heated man. The silent man is calm, thoughtful, controlled. He speaks carefully, listens well, avoids conflict. The heated man is impulsive, argumentative, foolish. He causes trouble for himself and others. Amenemope consistently praises silence and self-restraint. Better is poverty in the hand of God than riches in the storehouse. Better is bread when the heart is happy than riches with sorrow. This emphasis on inner tranquility over external success is notable. Egyptian culture valued Ma'at, cosmic order, truth, justice. Living according to Ma'at brought blessings. Violating it brought disaster. Amenemope teaches that true success lies in righteousness, not wealth or power. One can be poor yet blessed, rich yet cursed. The instruction became famous in biblical scholarship because of striking parallels with the Book of Proverbs in the Hebrew Bible. Proverbs 22, verse 17 through chapter 24, verse 22 shows remarkable similarity to Amenemope's 30 chapters. Phrases, concepts, even structural elements correspond closely. For example, Proverbs 22, verse 28 says, "Do not move an ancient boundary stone set up by your ancestors." Amenemope says, "Do not carry off the landmark at the boundaries of the arable land, nor disturb the position of the measuring cord." Proverbs 23, verse 1 through 3 advises about dining with rulers. Amenemope. Chapter 23 contains similar advice. The parallels are too numerous and specific to be coincidental. Either Proverbs borrowed from Amenemope, or both drew from common Near Eastern wisdom tradition. Most scholars conclude the former. An Israelite scribe knew Amenemope and adapted it for Hebrew context. This demonstrates cultural exchange between Egypt and Israel, showing biblical literature was influenced by broader ancient Near Eastern traditions. This discovery troubles some religious believers who assume biblical texts were purely divinely inspired, independent of human cultural influences. Finding that Proverbs adapted Egyptian source challenged claims of absolute uniqueness. Yet it also enriched understanding, showing Israelites valued wisdom regardless of source, adopting and adapting what was useful. Amenemope's theological perspective is thoroughly Egyptian. He frequently mentions gods, particularly Ra, but also universal divine presence. God loves him who cares for the poor more than him who respects the wealthy. This divine preference for justice over status appears repeatedly. Amenemope insists piety matters more than ritual offerings. Right conduct pleases gods more than lavish sacrifices. The text includes warnings about trusting in wealth. Riches come to you by theft. They depart before next day. When morning comes, they are gone. The storehouse which was full is empty. Wealth is transient, uncertain. The only reliable security comes from righteousness and divine favour. Amenemope also counsels against manipulating others. Do not force a man with pen upon papyrus. It is abomination to the god. This means do not pressure people to sign documents unfairly. Scribes had power to create binding contracts. Amenemope warns against abusing this power, insisting on justice in all dealings. The instruction addresses speech carefully. Let your heart and your tongue be in accord. Do not let your tongue go faster than your heart. Thoughtless speech causes endless problems. Words once spoken cannot be recalled. Better to speak less and think more. This counsel appears across wisdom literature worldwide. The value of restraint in speech. Amenemope warns against associating with fools and hot-tempered people. Their influence corrupts. Do not befriend the heated man, nor approach him for conversation. Bad company leads good people astray. One must choose associates carefully, surrounding oneself with the wise and virtuous. The teaching includes practical advice about managing property, dealing with disputes, handling responsibilities, but always, practical wisdom intertwines with moral teaching. Success comes not through cunning or force, but through integrity and alignment with Mahat. The final chapters emphasize piety and humility before gods. Man is clay and straw, the god is his builder. Humans are fragile, temporary, gods are eternal, powerful. Recognizing this inspires appropriate humility. Do not boast of accomplishments. Give credit to gods. Accept limitations gracefully. The Instruction of Amenemope survives in one primary manuscript, British Museum Papyrus, 10,474, discovered in the late 19th century. Fragments exist on ostraca and tablets, showing the text was copied and studied across generations. It was a popular teaching tool, used in scribal education. The text is not secret or forbidden in its original context. It was educational material, meant to be widely read and internalized. It became significant in biblical studies because of the Proverbs parallels, revealing cultural exchanges and literary borrowings between ancient civilizations. The instruction exemplifies Egyptian wisdom tradition at its best: practical, moral, balanced. It does not promise magic or secret knowledge, but offers time-tested advice for living well. Its teachings remain relevant: integrity, self-control, compassion, humility. These virtues transcend cultures and millennia. Amenemope's voice speaks across 33 centuries, advising his son and all who read his words. Give your ears, hear the sayings, give your heart to understand them. It profits to put them in your heart. The instruction invites readers into relationship with wisdom, presenting it not as burden, but as treasure. Those who embrace these teachings will find prosperity, respect, and divine favor. Those who reject them will stumble in darkness. The instruction of Amenemope is forbidden only in the sense that wisdom always is, available to all, embraced by few. The text offers guidance freely, but following guidance requires discipline. Most lack. The teachings are simple, but simplicity does not mean ease. Living righteously, controlling temper, speaking carefully, treating others justly. These are difficult even when one knows they are right. Amenemope's instruction remains forbidden not through concealment, but through the challenge of embodying wisdom in daily life. The Arslan Tash amulets. In 1933, archaeologists excavating Arslan Tash, ancient Hadatu, in northern Syria, discovered several stone and clay plaques inscribed with magical texts. These amulets date to approximately 7th century BCE, during the Assyrian Empire's dominance. They contain spells and invocations designed to protect households, particularly pregnant women and infants, from demonic attack. The amulets are small, roughly palm-sized, made of limestone or clay. They feature carved or incised images of demons, protective deities, and symbols. The texts are written in Aramaic with some Akkadian elements, reflecting the linguistic diversity of the late Assyrian period. The inscriptions are protective formulas, commanding demons to leave and invoking gods to guard the household. One famous plaque shows a demonic figure, possibly the demon Lilith or a similar entity. The creature has wings, unkempt hair, and a fearsome appearance. The accompanying text invokes protective powers against her. "O flyer in a dark chamber, go away at once, Lilith." The spell continues, invoking a covenant with deities that the demon must respect. Lilith, or Lilitu in Mesopotamian tradition, was a female demon who attacked pregnant women and newborn children. She caused miscarriages, stillbirths, and infant mortality. In Jewish tradition, Lilith evolved into Adam's first wife, who refused submission and became a demon. The Arslan Tash amulet represents earlier Mesopotamian conception of similar entity. The amulets were designed to be hung in homes, particularly in rooms where pregnant women stayed or where infants slept. Their presence created magical protective barrier. The demons depicted were apotropaic. Their frightening images scared away actual demons. Fighting fire with fire, the amulet's demon image served as guardian against real demonic threats. The texts invoke multiple deities: Ashur, chief god of Assyria; Sin, the moon god; Shamash, the sun god; others. These gods are called as witnesses and enforcers of the protective magic. By the oath of heaven and earth, by the oath of Baal and his house, no creature may enter. The polytheistic framework assumes multiple divine powers cooperate to protect believers. Some scholars debate the amulet's authenticity. The language contains unusual features, mixing Aramaic and Akkadian in ways some find suspicious. The paleography, study of ancient writing styles, shows forms some experts question. A few researchers propose the amulets are modern forgeries created to deceive collectors. However, most specialists accept them as genuine, explaining anomalies through the mixed cultural context of late Assyrian Syria. Similar amulets and magical texts are known from across the ancient Near East. Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions all develop protective formulas against demons, particularly those threatening childbirth. The persistence of these practices across millennia and cultures shows universal human fears about infant mortality and maternal death during childbirth. In pre-modern times, childbirth was extremely dangerous. Maternal and infant mortality rates were high. Families often lost children to disease, malnutrition, and infections. In absence of medical understanding, these deaths were attributed to supernatural causes. Demons, evil eye, witchcraft, these explanations made sense within available frameworks. Protective magic offered agency. Families could act, not merely accept fate. Hanging amulets, reciting spells, performing rituals gave feeling of control. Whether the magic worked objectively is less important than its psychological and social functions. It provided comfort, hope, and community support during vulnerable times. The Arslan Tash texts include specific names and genealogies. One reads, "Covenant of Ashur with Sasam, daughter of Padi." This personalizes the protection, binding specific person under divine covenant. The named individual gains unique protection through the amulet prepared specially for her. The invocation of covenant is significant. Covenants in ancient Near Eastern religion were binding agreements, not casual arrangements. Breaking covenant brought divine wrath. By establishing covenant that demons cannot enter, the amulet creates legally and magically binding prohibition. Demons violating it face divine punishment. The amulets contain threats against demons. If you approach this house, Ashur will shatter you. Shamash will strike you down. These are not requests, but commands backed by divine authority. The magical practitioner speaks with God's power, making the threat credible and enforceable. The imagery includes symbols, crescent moons, stars, divine figures. These are not decorative, but functional. Each symbol carries meaning and power. The crescent represents Sin, moon god. Stars represent celestial deities. Together they create protective constellation around the household. Modern reproduction of these amulets occurs in magical and esoteric communities. People seeking protection for themselves or children create or purchase replica Arslan Tash amulets. Whether believers expect literal demon protection or view the practice symbolically, the tradition continues. The amulets retain power as symbols of care for vulnerable lives. The Arslan Tash amulets are forbidden in that mainstream monotheistic religions condemn such magic as superstition or idolatry. Using protective formulas invoking multiple gods violates monotheistic exclusivity. Yet the underlying concern, protecting children and mothers, is universally recognized. Religious traditions develop their own protective prayers and rituals, replacing pagan formulas with acceptable alternatives. Jewish tradition has mezuzot, parchments inscribed with prayers affixed to doorposts protecting homes. Christian tradition uses holy water, blessed objects, saint medallions. Islamic tradition employs Quranic verses as protective talismans. The function remains constant, using sacred words and symbols to guard against harm. The Arslan Tash amulets are windows into ancient fears and hopes. They show people confronting dangers we still face, using tools available to them. They demonstrate that magic and religion are responses to human vulnerability, attempts to secure safety in an uncertain world. The amulets are forbidden relics of displaced religious system, yet they speak to timeless desire. Protect our children, guard our families, keep evil away from those we love. The Kesh Temple Hymn. The Kesh Temple Hymn is the oldest surviving literary text in the world. Written in Sumerian cuneiform, it dates to approximately 2600 BCE, the early dynastic period of ancient Sumer. The hymn praises the Temple of Kesh, a city in southern Mesopotamia, celebrating its construction and dedication to the goddess Ninhursag, mother goddess and patroness of the city. The text was copied and recopied for over 1,000 years. Scribal students in Old Babylonian period, around 1800 BCE, used it as educational text, practicing cuneiform writing by reproducing the ancient hymn. Multiple copies survive on clay tablets, showing slight variations but maintaining core structure and content. The hymn's longevity testifies to its importance and literary quality. The hymn begins with invocation of heaven and earth. When the destiny was fixed for the Holy Kesh Temple, Ninhursag determined a lofty fate for it. The Holy Kesh Temple arose from the earth like a mountain. The temple is not merely building, but cosmic center, connecting earth to heaven, manifesting divine presence in the human realm. The text describes the temple's construction in mythological terms. Gods participate in building. The foundations reach into the underworld. The top touches the sky. The temple is axis mundi, the cosmic axis around which reality is organized. Building the temple is cosmogonic act, establish an order where chaos existed. Ninhursag is celebrated as Great Mother, creator of life. She is associated with fertility of land, animals, and humans. The hymn praises her role in creation, her care for humanity, her power to bless. She has given birth to the Holy Kesh Temple. She has given birth like a cow to its calf. The temple is her child, born from divine labour. The hymn includes liturgical elements. Sections are marked for musical performance with notation indicating it was sung or chanted. Ancient Mesopotamian temples employed musicians who performed during rituals. The Kesh Temple hymn was living text, activated through performance during religious ceremonies. The language is highly poetic, using metaphors and parallelisms characteristic of Sumerian literature. The temple, whose platform is a great mountain. The Holy Kesh Temple, whose platform is a great mountain. The repetition with slight variation creates rhythm and emphasis. This poetic structure aids memorization and enhances aesthetic effect. The hymn addresses the temple directly. O Kesh Temple, you are great. O Kesh Temple, you are holy. This personification treats the temple as living being, capable of receiving praise. In ancient Near Eastern thought, temples were not inert structures, but dwellings animated by divine presence. Addressing them directly was appropriate and necessary. The text describes the temple's various features, its gates, courtyards, inner sanctuary. Each element is praised for perfection and holiness. The accumulated descriptions create sense of overwhelming sacred splendor. The temple is paradise on earth, a place where divine and human realms meet. The hymn concludes with blessings. The temple will stand forever. Its rituals will continue. The goddess will dwell there eternally, receiving offerings and protecting the city. These blessings are not merely wishes, but performative utterances. Speaking them makes them real, establishing the temple's eternal status through magical power of words. The Kesh temple hymn's survival is remarkable. Most Sumerian texts vanished when Sumerian language ceased to be spoken after 2000 BCE. Akkadian replaced Sumerian as Mesopotamia's primary language. Yet Sumerian remained a language of scholarship and religion, like Latin in medieval Europe. Scribes continued copying Sumerian classics, preserving them long after native speakers disappeared. The hymn provides insight into Sumerian religious thought. Temples were central to urban life. They were economic centers, administrative hubs, religious focal points. The temple-owned land employed workers, redistributed goods. The hymn's celebration of the temple reflects its importance beyond purely spiritual realm. Ninhursag's prominence in the hymn shows her significance in early Sumerian religion. Later, other deities like Enlil and Inanna became more prominent, but in earliest periods, mother goddess figures dominated. The hymn preserves memory of this earlier religious phase. The text's educational use in later periods shows how tradition was maintained. Young scribes learned their craft by copying ancient classics. This ensured cultural continuity, passing knowledge across generations. The Kesh temple hymn educated countless scribes, shaping Mesopotamian literary tradition. Modern recovery of the text came through archaeological excavation and patient decipherment of cuneiform tablets. Assyriologists pieced together fragmentary copies, comparing variants to reconstruct the complete text. Translation required deep knowledge of Sumerian, an isolated language unrelated to any living tongue. Each word's meaning was determined through contextual analysis of thousands of texts. The hymn is not forbidden in traditional sense. It was public liturgical text, meant to be performed and heard. It became forbidden through the death of its culture. When Mesopotamian civilization ended, its languages, religions, and literatures died. The hymn was not suppressed but forgotten, buried under millennia of sand and silence. Rediscovery made it accessible again, though to audience radically different from the original. We do not worship Ninhursag. We do not attend rituals at Kesh's temple. We cannot hear the hymn as its creators intended, sung in temple courts by priests who believed every word. We encounter it as archaeological artifact, literary fossil, voice from the remote past, speaking language dead for 4,000 years. Yet the hymn's beauty transcends its context, the praise of sacred space, the celebration of divine presence, the longing for permanence and blessing. These resonate across time. Humans have always built temples, sacred spaces where divine and human meet. The Kesh temple hymn is the oldest surviving expression of this universal impulse. It is first word in humanity's long conversation about the sacred. The hymn stands at the beginning of literature, marking the moment when humans first preserved their voices in permanent form. Everything written since descends from this impulse, to speak across time, to make words endure beyond the speaker's life, to create permanence from transient sound. The Kesh temple hymn is where literature begins, the first time humanity said, "Let these words last forever," and succeeded. The Book of Dreams. Ancient Egyptians believed dreams were messages from gods, glimpses into the future, or encounters with the dead. Dreams required interpretation to reveal their hidden meanings. Several dream manuals survive from ancient Egypt, the most famous being papyri from the Ramesside period around 1200 BCE. These manuals list dreams and their interpretations, providing guidance for understanding nocturnal visions. The dream books follow consistent format. They list dreams. If a man sees himself in a dream, followed by the dream content, then the interpretation, and whether the dream is good or bad. The entries are systematized, organized to allow quick reference. These were professional tools used by dream interpreters, priests who specialized in oniromancy, dream divination. One papyrus, the Chestabiti, Papyrus 3, contains extensive dream interpretation lists. It addresses hundreds of scenarios. If a man sees himself in a dream looking out a window, good. It means hearing his voice. If a man sees himself in a dream with his bed on fire, bad. It means driving away his wife. The interpretations are specific, linking dream images to concrete outcomes. The logic underlying interpretations is not always obvious to modern readers. Some interpretations use wordplay, exploiting Egyptian language's homonyms. Words that sound similar can link dream symbols to meanings. Other interpretations rely on symbolic associations. Fire suggests passion or destruction. Windows suggest communication. Climbing suggests ambition or progress. Some dreams are universally positive or negative. Seeing oneself worshipping a god is always good. Being bitten by a snake is always bad. These align with common sense. Venerating deities brings blessings. Snake bites bring danger. Other interpretations are more counterintuitive. If a man sees himself in a dream copulating with a woman, bad. It means mourning. Sexual dreams warn of sorrow, not pleasure. The manuals distinguish between ordinary people and specific classes. Some sections address dreams particular to priests, officials, or craftsmen. Different social roles encounter different symbols and require different interpretations. This reflects Egyptian society's hierarchical, specialized nature. Nightmares require special attention. Evil dreams, sent by malevolent spirits, or resulting from personal impurity, must be countered. The manuals include spells to recite upon waking from bad dreams, neutralizing their power. O Isis, come to me, drive away the evil things I have seen in the night. Invoking deities protects against dream omens fulfillment. Some interpretations are sexual. If a man sees himself in a dream looking at his phallus, bad. His possessions will be assessed. The manuals do not shy from body imagery, treating it as natural symbolic language. Bodily functions, organs, sexual acts, all carry meanings requiring interpretation. Dreams about family members predict their fates. Seeing dead relatives suggests they need offerings or bring warnings. Seeing living relatives in distress signals actual danger. The boundary between dream world and waking reality is permeable. Dreams access other realms where truths unavailable to waking consciousness are revealed. The manuals assume dreams are objective communications, not mere products of sleeping minds. They come from outside, from gods, demons, or the dead. This external source theory justifies interpretation. If dreams are random neural activity, interpretation is pointless, but if dreams are messages, they require decoding. Modern psychology offers different view. Freud proposed dreams express unconscious desires and conflicts. Jung saw them as communications from the collective unconscious, containing archetypal symbols. Neuroscience understands dreams as brain activity during sleep, processing memories and emotions. These approaches internalize dreams, making them psychological rather than supernatural. Yet the Egyptian approach is not entirely incompatible with modern views. If dreams express unconscious material, they still require interpretation. The symbols may be personal rather than universal, but they carry meaning nonetheless. Egyptian dream interpreters were early psychologists helping people understand inner lives through symbolic language. The dream books also contain protective spells. Before sleep, one could recite prayers asking gods to send good dreams and prevent bad ones. May I see good dreams. May I see what will bring me happiness. May bad dreams not come to me. This proactive approach attempted to control dream content, ensuring beneficial visions. Some dreams required action. If a dream warned of danger, the dreamer might perform rituals, make offerings, or consult priests for additional guidance. Dreams could be tested. If a dream prediction came true quickly, it confirmed the interpretation system's validity. If it did not, alternative interpretations were sought, or the dream was reclassified as insignificant. The manuals were restricted to literate class. Most Egyptians could not read, so they depended on professional interpreters. This gave interpreters power and status. Controlling access to dream interpretation meant controlling access to future knowledge, powerful position in society that valued divination. The manuals were not absolutely fixed. Different papyri contained different entries, suggesting the tradition evolved. Interpreters developed their own list based on experience, recording new dream types and meanings. The manuals were living documents, updated across generations. The Egyptian dream books influenced later traditions. Greek and Roman dream interpretation drew on Egyptian sources. Artemidorus, the 2nd century Greek author of the Critica, the most comprehensive ancient dream manual, likely knew Egyptian traditions. His work, in turn, influenced medieval and Renaissance dream interpretation in Europe. Islamic tradition developed extensive dream interpretation, considering it a legitimate form of prophecy. The Prophet Muhammad's dreams were considered divinely inspired. Islamic scholars wrote dream manuals, continuing traditions traceable to ancient Near Eastern sources, including Egypt. The Book of Dreams is forbidden not through suppression, but through displacement. Modern secular society generally dismisses dream interpretation as superstition. Therapy may explore dreams psychologically, but few consult dream books for prophetic guidance. The Egyptian manuals represent worldview where dreams matter, where they connect humans to divine realm, where future can be known through nocturnal visions. Yet dreams continue fascinating us. We still wonder what they mean. We sense they are significant even if we reject supernatural interpretations. The Egyptian dream books remind us that dreams have always demanded explanation. Humans have always sought meaning in the images that visit us in darkness. The ancient manuals are one culture's answer to universal question. What do these visions mean, and what should we do about them? The Egyptian dream interpreters sit in a long line of those who believe dreams reveal hidden truths. They were wrong about God sending messages, but perhaps right that dreams matter, that the unconscious speaks in symbols requiring interpretation. The Book of Dreams is forbidden knowledge from lost world where sleep connected humans to divine, where every dream was potential prophecy, where the night's visions shaped the day's actions. The manuals remain, recording thousands of dreams from people dust for 3 millennia, people who sought meaning in darkness and found answers we can still read but no longer believe.